Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share. If you didn't follow this trial with us, don't worry. There's a link to the playlist in the description box. And if you go to day 2, there is a full presentation for you and you'll be all caught up. But here's a recap. In October of 2021, 44-year-old Joseph Ferlazzo, a New Hampshire man, brutally murdered his 22-year-old wife, Emily, during their 1-year wedding anniversary trip in Bolton, Vermont. Now, this case does, of course, come with a trigger warning. It's for educational purposes and for adults only. After a heated argument, according to Ferlazzo, in their camper van, he shot Emily twice in the head, and then he dismembered her body with a handsaw, and he hid her remains in trash bags and kept that in the camper van. He initially lied about her disappearance, but then later confessed to a friend, which led to his arrest because, of course, that friend did the right thing and told the police immediately. Now, during his police interrogation, his behavior raised some eyebrows. In fact, we threw virtual tomatoes at him, because he bizarrely requested a blankie, claiming that he was cold, while he casually discussed this gruesome crime. That was really something to see. If you didn't see that, it's also on the playlist. Now, this was a moment that struck investigators and all of us as chillingly detached. I mean, the behavior panel also did a full analysis of his testimony, so go and check that out if you haven't yet. Despite claiming self-defense, can you believe that this guy claimed self-defense? A jury convicted him of first-degree murder in December of 2024, and that was after a 5-day trial that we all watched together. On April 24th of 2025, Joseph Ferlazzo was sentenced, and so we're going to watch that today. We're going to see victim impact statements, we're going to see his defense attorneys read his character letters, and then we're going to see the judge address Joseph Ferlazzo directly and sentence him. Justice for Emily Ferlazzo was served. See you later. Hello everyone and welcome back to another live stream with me, Grizzly. This is Grizzly True Crime, and as you just saw in the intro, you know what we're here for. We are finally here to watch the sentencing of Joseph Ferlazzo on the day that it happened, because today is obviously Saturday. We're in court on a Saturday, okay? Thank you all for being here. On the day that it happened, I was wondering, where's the live stream? Where's the live? I was looking all day and it wasn't live, but they had cameras in the courtroom and they were therefore able to capture some of the footage. So I've made a compilation of that. I'm going to be linking all the sources for you in the description box if you just want to watch it without any commentary. I don't think I'm going to comment too much, but I will definitely make commentary in between, especially when he talks. Oh my goodness. So one more time, if you don't know anything about this case, please check out the description box. There's a link to the playlist there, and especially on day 2. On day 1, we read through an entire article that was very comprehensive, and on day 2, we went over an entire presentation. If you've been here for a while, I think you know how I do my presentations and things, and so you could see that there. I could see from my sound settings, you guys can hear me, right? My mic is like loud and clear today. Is it too loud? I hope not. All right, so let me bring this up over here for us. Okay, it's 2 hours and 46 minutes of footage that I have for us today, which, as I say, is a compilation of everything that happened on the sentencing day. It's going to be the state's arguments for sentencing, asking the judge for the maximum, right? And it's going to be the defense's arguments as well. We're going to see the defense read character letters about him. We might get snarky. We're going to see him talk, and we're going to see victim impact statements. And then we're going to see the judge address him directly, and so well. Like he's such a great judge as well. Interrogation files is here. Thank you for being here. Tracy says sound is excellent. Gee, that is great to know. Okay, good. So let me start playing this for us, and let's get on with it. State's arguments. You can see on the top there's a banner there for you. All right, you can always see who's talking, what's happening. I made sure to put that there for you already.
We are back on the record in case of State versus Joseph Ferlazzo Jr., 21 CR 8967. All parties are present after a lunch break, and I think we're ready for argument. Is that correct?
That's correct, Judge.
Ms. George.
Thank you. Judge, the state's request in this case is that Mr. Ferlazzo be sentenced to 50 years to life to serve. The gravity of this request did not come lightly, and to justify this request, the state wants to first just highlight briefly the case facts as outlined at trial. In October of 2021, Mr. Ferlazzo came to Vermont with his then wife to celebrate their 1-year anniversary and to see his sister Nicole. He was 41 years old at the time, Emily was 22. An argument eventually ensues between the two of them, and Emily is very clear that she wants to leave, that she no longer wants to be with him, and she goes to bed. And rather than either let her leave or to leave himself to give her space, he sat on the couch and he stewed. He ultimately got up, he walked to the closet, he retrieved a handgun equipped with a silencer, he grabbed a throw pillow from the couch, he jumped on top of her, he pinned her down on the bed, put the throw pillow over her head, over her face, and shot her, not once, but twice in the head, killing her. Rather than call for help, rather than go right outside and get his sister to call the police, he put a plastic grocery bag over her head. He tied a trash bag around her neck so that she didn't get blood in the camper. He moved her body to the shower. He put her shoes, her glasses, her phone in a bag to throw out. He bagged up the bloody pillows and the bloody bedding, put new pillows and new bedding on the bed, flipped the mattress, put those new beddings out, and went to bed. The next morning, he makes French press coffee for he and his sister. He takes a shower in her condo, and he goes to eat breakfast with his sister and her boyfriend. He has an omelet, and he drinks one mimosa. Then he goes to his best friend's house in St. Albans, Sarah and Jason Lang. He tells them that Emily left while she's actually laying dead in his van in their driveway. Later that day, he tattoos his sister. Then he goes to dinner with her and her boyfriend. He doesn't tell them anything about what he did. And he told the jury that he didn't tell them because he didn't want to bring his drama into their life, because he considered murdering his wife drama. The next day, he meets his sister in Burlington, again for breakfast, coffee, and to hang around Church Street. He stops at Hannaford on his way home, or back to the Langs, to get bleach, and he goes back to the van to, quote, clean up his mess. He hangs out at a bonfire with friends and an off-duty police officer, never says anything about what he's done or about his wife being in the van. In fact, he says so little about Emily in the over 5 hours that he's hanging out at this bonfire that the officer didn't even know he was married. And at some point, between all of these activities, he stabs Emily's body 18 times. He dismembers her body into pieces, including sawing off her head, and he puts her body in trash bags like she's garbage. By Monday, he realizes that he needs to get rid of her body, and that at some point, people are going to start looking for Emily. So he goes back to his in-laws in New Hampshire in order to get his Jeep. And rather than tell them to take responsibility for what he's done or to give them some peace of mind about where their daughter is, he lies to them. He takes a shower in their shower. He eats a big bowl of spaghetti made by his father-in-law. He gives them her ID. He lies to the police about where his camper is. And he leaves in his Jeep headed back to Vermont. He arrives at another friend's house around 11 p.m. He knows at this point that the police are onto him. He knows he needs to get the van and get rid of Emily's body. But he sees the police at the Langs, knows they will be finding Emily. He tells Spencer he killed Emily and that she's in the van, and he gets out of the car and flees.
I love that they do this whole recap. Of course, it's been months since he was convicted. He was convicted, I think it was December 13th of 2024. So it's been a long wait to get to the sentencing, and finally we are here. So a recap is helpful. If any of you want a recap of the case, of course you can watch the whole trial if you wanted to, or just go to day 2 for the presentation just to get the timeline and all of that. Sue, thank you so much. So I hope you guys are paying attention if you've never heard of this case before. If you have heard of it, this will just help to jog your memory. What else did I want to say? I think that's about it. But oh yeah, I wanted to say, doesn't it sound eerily similar to Gabby Petito's case? And it happened around the same time. This was in October of 2021. They went on a trip in a van, a camper van, and he literally returned to her parents' house without her. And did my sound drop again? What is it doing? Why does it do that? I'm going to throw a fit at Bill Gates. I think it should be good now. Literally, can you believe that he went there and sat with her parents, lying about her whereabouts? It's ridiculous. Okay, let's continue to listen.
The next day, he's taken into custody and he's interviewed by police. This interview, from the state's perspective, is the one time throughout all of this, up to and including today, that Mr. Ferlazzo appears to be honest about what happened in the van. He quickly takes responsibility, I believe within 1 minute, telling the police what he did. And although he shows little to no remorse, he does give a detailed explanation about what happened, never once saying anything about self-defense or Emily having a gun. He's arrested shortly after. He's arraigned on first-degree murder. And when multiple opportunities to make this process easier for Emily's family, he does the opposite, as outlined in the statements from Adrian and David in the PSI. For example, as it's been noted, he immediately fights Emily's parents in court to keep their shared dog from going to Emily's family. In the defense sentencing memorandum, defense takes issue with this statement claiming that the dog was his and not their shared dog, which is telling from the state's perspective, as though him getting the dog just months before they met completely negates the fact that they were married and cared for this dog together. Such a spiteful and vindictive stance to take in the months and now years after committing this horrific offense against their daughter. Also of importance from the state's perspective and highlighted in the PSI is that less than 2 weeks after murdering, stabbing, and dismembering his wife, who he claimed to be the love of his life, and after being arraigned on a first-degree murder charge, he receives a major disciplinary report while incarcerated for hitting on a female correctional officer, specifically by propositioning her, calling her pumpkin, and asking for her phone number.
What?
Next, he doesn't accept responsibility for his actions and tries to have his clearly voluntary confession thrown out. This request, from the state's perspective, was without merit. It delayed justice for Emily, dragged her family through litigation, and he even had the audacity at the suppression hearing to act like the signature on the Miranda waiver wasn't his, despite video evidence that he signed it and that he was coherent and lucid when he did so. He further attempted to convince this court that he hadn't eaten or slept for days, despite overwhelming evidence that in the days before he spoke to the police, he had had breakfast with his sister at Maxie's, he'd had dinner with his sister at Twig's, he'd had breakfast again with his sister at Henry's, and just the night before his interview, he'd eaten spaghetti at his in-laws. He had repeatedly attempted to convince this court that Vermont State Police had treated him poorly, that they had ignored his pleas for help, ignored his pleas for sleep and food, and then attempted to convince the court that they treated him so well that he was unable to make a voluntary confession. As the court has now seen, Mr. Ferlazzo was treated with the utmost respect during this interview and gave a very thorough and mostly complete voluntary statement.
Let me just check. Does it drop down? Okay, sorry. I will sort out this microphone, okay? I'll have a talking to it later. This guy got given a blankie and donuts, and he was treated so well during his interrogation, and oh my word, if you have never seen him testify, you gotta check it out on the playlist. It's insane.
And then we go to trial. The state, as this court knows, does not engage in trial penalties when individuals choose to assert their constitutional right to a trial by jury. That right is a foundation of our legal system that the state has the greatest respect for. But that right, and the state's respect for that right, extends to Mr. Ferlazzo's ability to make the state prove their case and to assert a defense. It does not extend to Mr. Ferlazzo's ability to get on the witness stand and do what he did. What he did on the witness stand from the state's perspective is appalling, and the state considers it an incredibly aggravating factor in this case. From the moment that he started testifying, he started degrading Emily. From stating that the moment he met her, he told his friends he wanted to make her his next ex-wife, to smirking on the stand after saying they were all hanging out and chopping it up, to describing there being an apology.
I'm so glad they're bringing this all back up. He literally said they were just chopping it up. Him and his friends, in a dismemberment case. Yes.
Polyamorous relationship, but what he was actually describing was a relationship in which he was unfaithful repeatedly to Emily and seemingly blaming her for not being okay with him having sex with other women and not understanding or appreciating his sexual needs. He took no responsibility, he took no accountability, and he deflected all blame to Emily. He repeated statements about how Emily was abusive, both physically and emotionally, and they were yet another attempt to deflect any blame and to sully Emily's memory, and they were not corroborated by a single piece of evidence. His new version at trial about how he ended up killing Emily was a lie. And we know it was a lie because it was contrary to all of the physical and forensic evidence presented. For example, he repeatedly stated that he held her body and that her body dropped back to the pillow. That is a lie. We know it was a lie because the medical examiner clearly testified that Emily's head was low when she was shot, and that he placed a throw pillow over her face in the head with a silencer. He said they had both been drinking. That is a lie. The toxicology report showed that Emily had no alcohol in her system. He said they both slept with guns under the pillows, but her mother, Adrienne, testified that Emily did not carry a gun. Detective Voris testified that all the firearms were purchased by Joseph, and the only gun found under any pillow when the van was searched was the gun used to kill Emily. On cross, he even repeatedly denied putting a garbage bag over Emily's head or tying one around her neck, despite knowing that photos of exactly this exist, which were taken during Emily's autopsy. The state believed at the time that Mr. Ferlazzo opened the door for the state to present those photos, but decided not to, mostly for Emily's family. But it is important for the court to know. These are just a few of the lies that Mr. Ferlazzo told while on the stand, all in an effort to degrade Emily, blame Emily, and make himself the victim. The state was frankly shocked to read in the sentencing memorandum that Mr. Ferlazzo went out of his way to disagree with much of Adrienne's victim impact statement, as if even at this moment in time, after being convicted, he still doesn't believe that she has a right to provide a statement that he possibly could disagree with. But most notably, he went out of his way to disagree with her statement that he lied in his testimony and that the court should disregard her statement because he has a constitutional right to assert a self-defense claim. The state would say again that that right to assert a defense is a constitutional right. The right to commit perjury is absolutely not. And as the court noted in its order denying Mr. Ferlazzo a new trial, Mr. Ferlazzo's trial version of events leading up to Emily's murder is inconsistent with the physical evidence produced at trial, and the jury was well within its right to discredit any of Mr. Ferlazzo's testimony or statements that were not independently corroborated, including any testimony relevant to alleged provocation, and they did exactly that. The jury rejected Mr. Ferlazzo's version of events, and the court must consider that in sentencing. To get on the stand and claim amnesia as to almost every incident that occurred after Emily's murder, including the stabbing of her body, The dismemberment, the breakfast, the visits, the bonfire, the tattoo, the text he sent, pretending that she was still alive, and to only remember that he was holding her and mourning her with the dog is, in the state's opinion, a very aggravating factor. And the state believes what they heard Dr. Powell testify is that his amnesia is not credible. Then judge, he's found guilty of first-degree murder. The state has proven their case. He's set to be sentenced. And does he take accountability then? No. He instead tries to fire his attorneys because they aren't doing what he tells them to. And instead of just refraining from not making a statement for the PSI, he decides instead to provide a 9-sentence statement that continues to blame Emily, continues to take no account.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the right moment to just pause quickly. For those of you wondering who's speaking, there's the banners at the top there. This is the prosecutor, Sarah George, speaking. You'll hear from the judge later. We're first going to hear from the defense, what their statements are.
Accountability says she was angry, that they were both drinking, says on one hand that he made a split-second decision that he had to kill her, but also said that if he hadn't been drinking or doing drugs, he probably would have made a different decision. No accountability, all excuses and deflection of blame. Under the statute, the court has to consider a number of factors when determining a just sentence. First, the nature and circumstances of the crime. This is, of course, the most aggravating factor here. The nature and circumstances of this crime are horrific, incredibly violent, unprovoked, and unjustified. The post-mortem acts are evidence that Mr. Ferlazzo was motivated by rage and anger, and are evidence of his desire to hide his actions and not be held responsible. The history and character of the defendant. The only mitigating factor from the state's perspective is that Mr. Ferlazzo lacks any criminal convictions. But he doesn't lack bad character. He admitted to having affairs on his wife. He characterized it as polyamory. He refused to let his in-laws have the shared dog, made them go to court to get it. He murdered his wife and then blamed her, attempted to seduce a female correctional officer. These are not redeeming qualities. And the state would ask that the court read the reference letters provided by Mr. Ferlazzo in the lens of what we know about how Mr. Ferlazzo and Emily met and became involved. The state would also ask the court to read those letters provided in the lens of what Mr. Ferlazzo himself testified to at trial regarding his relationships with his clients that Emily took issue with. In fact, he testified that Emily called Mr. Ferlazzo out for his inappropriate and unprofessional relationships with clients. And I believe Mr. Ferlazzo even testified that he would have relationships with his clients at the office that he did tattoos for, and that Emily would get upset with him and threaten to have his license revoked. Mr. Ferlazzo and Emily met through piercing and tattooing. She was 20, he was 39 or 40. She was struggling with trauma related to a sexual assault and some family dynamics. He made her feel seen, loved, and safe, until, of course, he didn't. Ms. Trombley, one of the letters, was 13 years old when she met Mr. Ferlazzo, who was then 33 or 34. She met him through piercing and tattooing. She describes spending time with him both when she was a client and on a personal level. She was a vulnerable young girl struggling with an eating disorder and abusive relationships, and he was 20 years older than her. Ms. Dober, who was 21 when she met Mr. Ferlazzo, he was 36 or 37, said that when he gave her a tattoo, they started communicating and spending more time together outside of the tattoo shop. And she described the murder of Emily as a slip in judgment. Another young woman, Ms. LaFave, had met Mr. Ferlazzo around 2016 when she walked into the tattoo shop and they started hanging out, having dinner, watching movies, went to the Boston Aquarium. He taught her how to swim, going to the beach, having dinners together. Defense wants this court to read those statements as proof that he is of high moral character, but that is not the way the state reads them. I think they show us exactly who Mr. Ferlazzo is. He's a man that finds young women, young vulnerable women, while tattooing and piercing them and begins inappropriate and unprofessional relationships with them. He also submitted letters from his former cellmate, Nicholas Mora, who ironically has 2 prior convictions for domestic assault.
Who's looking forward to hearing those letters? We're going to hear them later. Thank you so much all for being here. I really appreciate it. Please like and share so others know that we are live right now.
Lastly, Judge, the state asks that this court consider the letter from Sarah and Jason Lang and give them the weight that it deserves. The Langs claim that Joseph is like a brother to them, but the most they really could say was that they miss him. The court asked the state to consider that Mr. Ferlazzo trusted these two enough that he brought his van to their house and left it with Emily's body inside. He told investigators during his interview that when he told the Langs his lie that they had fought and she had left him, that their response was good fucking riddance. These are the same two that refused to give Remington, now named Callie, back to the Basses after they found out what Mr. Ferlazzo had done to her.
Oh, wow. April Jones says, I have 2 tattoos and a piercing from Joe. I literally broke down crying when I heard about this in December. I also knew someone who dated him. Oh my goodness. Sure. A few people have emailed me actually that did get tattoos from him. And I interviewed one of his like ex-girlfriends. So if you didn't see that, it's on the playlist as well. It was really shocking.
Third, judge the defendant's family circumstances and relationships. The state is not aware of any lasting family relationships that Mr. Ferlazzo has. He appears to have been estranged from his family before he murdered Emily, and certainly even more now, further evidenced by Dr. Powell's testimony that none would respond to him. The state is unaware of any relationship he has with his father. The state knows that his stepmother was stabbed to death, a murder which remains unsolved. And he was working on rekindling his relationship with his sister, Nicole, until the weekend in question.
Remember that his stepmother's murder is unsolved? I've been trying to look into that. I've been trying to request documents and anything I can about that case. I can't find much, but that is interesting. And they were looking at him as well.
In which he seemingly went out of his way to involve his sister in the aftermath of Emily's murder. As the court saw in Nicole's testimony, this incident has caused her incredible trauma and anxiety. Knowing that her brother committed this murder and then spent the entire weekend with her, including tattooing her arm, lying to her repeatedly, and the fact that she had no idea has significantly impacted her ability to trust people. Her arm, with the large tattoo now on it, is a constant reminder for her about what her brother did and how close he brought her to it. The fact that Mr. Ferlazzo refused to accept responsibility and went to trial put his sister in a particularly tough and difficult trial, one live streamed for the world to watch, and has only further estranged the two of them. The court further saw how this impacted his friend Spencer, whom also believed him to be a brother. His attempt to make him an accomplice after this has significantly impacted him. The state would also like the court to consider that no one has credibly testified that Mr. Ferlazzo was abused as a child. The court has not heard any evidence of this other than the representation from defense counsel in their sentencing memo. In fact, during Mr. Ferlazzo's testimony and her deposition, defense repeatedly tried to get this information from her, and she denied any abuse in their household as children. The impact on minor children, thankfully, is not applicable. And the need for treatment, Judge. The state doesn't know what Mr. Ferlazzo needs for treatment. While he has stated at trial and since that he murdered Emily in self-defense and that he had to do it, he is also now blaming drugs and alcohol. But there's no evidence that he had or has a significant drug or alcohol issue. In fact, I would remind this court that the off-duty officer who spent over 5 hours with him the day after the murder noted that he was not abusing marijuana. He was using it, but not abusing it, and that he wasn't drinking at all. His sister didn't know any drug or alcohol use of concern. He had one mimosa at breakfast. When speaking with police, he didn't indicate any extreme drug or alcohol use and had a very clear memory of what occurred. This new claim of drugs and alcohol being to blame is just another way for Mr. Ferlazzo to deflect blame from himself. If he were in the throes of alcoholism or drug abuse, all of the people that interacted with him that weekend, and it was many, would have noted some level of problem. And there's no evidence of this. This is not a case about alcohol use or drug use. It is a case about rage, violence, control, abuse, and lies. There is zero evidence to support that drugs or alcohol played any role in what Mr. Ferlazzo did to him.
Look at the defense taking notes. They're like, listen, because they're definitely going to argue that. They're going to bring that up. They've even got a psychologist testifying about his substance abuse disorders and things like that today. So, yeah, he cannot claim ineffective counsel. This defense really fought hard for him. Apparently, they changed Remy, the dog's name, to Kelly, I believe it was. Remington is obviously the name of a gun. And also, to note, he was a tattoo artist. So you know what sucks? Is that in all this time in prison, even though you're not officially allowed to tattoo, he's gonna have some skill that could be valuable in prison. That sucks. But anyway, at least he won't get out for a very long time. I haven't given a spoiler of how long. Some of you might already know. Maybe, I don't even think I put it in the description box, the exact amount, because I wanted to watch this with you and just know, even though I put together this compilation, I tried not to watch a lot of it because I want to react to it live with you. So thank you so much for being here with me. For those of you who emailed me this, I was looking for it on the day that this happened when he was sentenced on April 24th of 2025. That's the official day. Today's April 26th, a Saturday when we're watching it together. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much. But thank you if you have already watched it and you're here anyway. That is so sweet. All right, so let's continue to hear the state's arguments.
Emily. As to any noncompliance with court orders or failures to appear, of course, Mr. Ferlazzo has been incarcerated since this incident, but the state would note that the evidence is clear that he did repeatedly lie to try to get out of this case while making plans to hide Emily's body. The risk to self, other, and community at large presented by the defendant judge, the state would submit that there is no greater risk to the public, specifically the women in our community, than a man who is unfaithful to his 22-year-old wife, blames her for not allowing him to be unfaithful, scares her, intimidates her, and then murders her when she tells him she doesn't want to be with him anymore, stabs her body 18 times, including through her heart, goes about his weekend with friends and family as if he's completely unfazed, dismembers her body, puts her in trash bags, and then blames her for the entire thing. There is no greater risk than a man who refuses to accept responsibility and thinking that believing because he admitted to killing her is the same thing as taking responsibility.
Yeah, no, that's not the same at all. And I forgot about that very scary detail. He stabbed 22-year-old Emily's body 18 times post-mortem, because how he killed her is he shot her twice in the head. And then he went out, he came back, he stabbed her 18 times post-mortem. That's so crazy. And then dismembered her. And then left these trash bags with her dismembered remains in the camper van. Yeah, when they say there's no greater risk, I agree. Don't let this guy back out into society.
This is not an acceptance of responsibility, and simply saying that he did it is not the same thing. The state would remind the court that days after murdering Emily, knowing full well where she is, he sent her a text message stating, "You're an asshole. I don't deserve this shit." Mr. Ferlazzo appears to believe that every woman that he engages with owes him everything, including their life, and is owed nothing in return. This type of ego and the risk it poses to his next potential partner cannot be overstated. When thinking about comparable cases, Judge, in Vermont, I struggled to find a case that adequately compares to this one. The premeditation, calculation, post-mortem dismemberment, post-mortem behavior, lying at trial, continuing to lie for the PSI, tearing apart the victim impact statement in a sentencing memorandum, all feels incomparable. Again, had Mr. Ferlazzo simply made the state prove their case, the state would likely be asking for somewhere in the range of the mandatory minimum, or something close to that. But that is not what he did. He got on the stand and made the very deliberate and unnecessary choice to lie and blame Emily for her own murder. To testify that she was assaultive not just towards him, but her beloved dog. The court saw how Emily interacted with Callie, Remington, now Callie,
Kelly,
and the kittens.
Yes, he literally said that Emily attacked him and attacked the dog. He just had to throw in there and attack the dog. I mean, sure, I'm getting angry all over again. Like we were during the trial. Like, wait, what? Sure, this guy, he's the worst.
To think or to put forth that she might harm them from the state's perspective is an aggravating factor. He then doubled down on that statement again when he tore apart every sentence that Emily's family stated in their victim impact statement. He's gone to extreme lengths to discredit her, to blame her, to insult her memory, and to insult her family and friends. The complete detachment from any sense of self-recognition and accountability in the state's opinion should be met by this court with a greater punishment than the mandatory minimum. The closest comparator in recent history the state could think of is a Tukarang, in which court is well aware of the extreme circumstances in that case. And even in that case, after trial, in which Mr. Grung did not testify, the court sentenced him to the mandatory minimum of 35 years.
I did not, no. It was a split to serve
27.
a lower amount.
The state believes the case is significantly more aggravating and deserves a significantly higher sentence. And the state's only briefly, Judge, going to address Mr. Ferlazzo's request for a sentence to say that the state understands the position the defense needs to take, but this request of 15 years is an insult to Emily. It's an insult to her family and her friends, the Vermont State Police, the people of our community and state. 15 years, followed by probation for the premeditated murder of his wife, for jumping on top of her, pinning her down, putting a pillow over her face and shooting her twice, by stabbing her body after dismembering her, cutting her into pieces, putting her in garbage bags, and then going about his weekend, and then consistently lying about what happened at trial and since. Had Mr.
I mean, it should be LWOP, life without parole. The defense is asking for 15 years. 15. That's what the defense proposes. The state's like, we'd like the max, and I wish it was life without parole. We shall see what it is. If you don't know, then we'll experience that together later when the judge does sentence him.
Ferlazzo have been found guilty of voluntary manslaughter. 15 years would be appropriate, but he was not, and so it is not, and the state believes that Mr. Ferlazzo should get 15 years on top of the mandatory minimum because of his behavior at the time and since. Finally, Judge, you heard from Emily's parents, David and Adrian, her brothers, her best friend Lauren. You haven't heard from countless others in the courtroom and the community who knew and loved Emily. Every single person that knew her, or even some that didn't, feel her loss deeply and immensely. Her smile, as the court saw, her incredible voice, her kindness, her love, and her contagious laugh. If they were all allowed to speak, they would. Her aunt and cousins wanted you to know that she is spunky, she was full of life, bright, driven, talented, dedicated, compassionate, and full of laughter. They want the court to know that they are here for her and that they feel her loss every day. The state, Your Honor, is seeking a sentence of 50 years to life to account for Mr. Ferlazzo's actions at the time and since, and the risk he poses upon release. With good time, the state expects he would be eligible, he could be eligible after 40 years. Mr. Ferlazzo was nearly 42 at the time, Emily was 22. He had twice the number of years on this earth than she did when he killed her, and it seems reasonable he should spend the same number of years inside a jail that he had the opportunity to spend outside of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh, are we ready to hear from the defense? Okay, they really, as I say, they really defended him all the way. Like, I mean, it's quite bizarre at times. It's too much, a little bit too much. But at least he can't say ineffective counsel here, because they really went all out for him. 15 years is what the defense wants. The states wants 50 to life. I would like LWOP, okay? Like never be released again. I mean, can you imagine? Premeditated murder, post-mortem stabbing 18 times, and dismemberment. Yeah, I don't think he should ever get out.
His chance.
Thank you, Judge. I just have a few brief comments in response to the state's argument.
So if you're only joining now, welcome. We have 2 hours and 46 minutes of footage that I've compiled together for us from, there's different court feeds between Court TV and Law and Crime and everywhere that captured this day, and they've released it in segments. So I put that all together in order as much as I can. And so 2 hours and 46 minutes is what we have to work with today. And this, as you can see on the top, there's Vermont. It happened in Vermont, versus Joseph Ferlazzo. The defense is Margaret Jantz, and the judge is John Pacht. So I want to quickly tell you just a little bit for a second here. Hold on one second. I want to put this above here. Just quickly about Emily, we're going to hear more about her later when her mom does the victim impact statements. So she was 22 years old. This guy was 44 years old at his trial, of course, in December. So I don't know if he's turned 45 yet. I cannot remember his date of birth. But yeah, I think even if he gets, 50 years, no, it's not enough. No, it should be forever. So in early 2020, Emily Jean Schwartz, 22, started dating Joseph Ferlazzo, 41. They met through a friend who was learning how to do piercings from Joseph. Joseph was a tattoo artist. Emily was born on July 25th of 1999 in Plymouth, New Hampshire. She was a licensed nursing assistant who dreamed of becoming a cosmetologist, and she was a talented singer, and we're going to see her sing later. She does sing so beautifully. She loved her cat Oreo and her dog Remy, which her parents have renamed to Callie. The dog, of course. The couple got married in October 2020, just a few months after they started dating. On their 1-year wedding anniversary in October of 2021, they took a trip to Vermont in their converted minibus that they lived in on Emily's parents' property. And Emily got to meet her sister-in-law for the first time on Friday, October 15th of 2021. Do you guys remember this case? I feel like there's quite a few new people here as well. The van, that's the picture of the van, was nicknamed Roaming Rosie, and their trip was planned from Friday, October 15th of 2021 to Monday, October 18th of 2021. But by Saturday, October 16th, 2021, Emily was missing. Joe said that they had an argument and she was going to Uber back home. Phew, that guy can lie. Oh my goodness. There he is. Okay, just giving you a quick recap here. So what happened? Emily and Joseph planned a weekend getaway in Bolton, Vermont for their 1-year wedding anniversary in their camper van, a minibus that they converted and lived in. On Friday, October 15th of 2021, they parked at a condominium complex on Bear Run in Bolton, Vermont. They started arguing over the course of the evening, and Emily allegedly told him that she didn't want to be with him anymore. Emily went to lie down on the bed, and in the early morning hours of Saturday, October 16th of 2021 in Bolton, Vermont, Joseph Ferlazzo jumped on top of his wife, Emily, put a red throw pillow over her head and shot her twice with a Glock 19 9mm caliber handgun, which had been modified to fit a silencer. Yeah, he's traveling with a gun with a silencer. Okay, he put a plastic bag over her head, tied a garbage bag around her neck, and carried her body to the bathroom. He bagged up a bloody pillow, bedding, and the red throw pillow, with 2 bullet holes in it, and put that in another garbage bag. He flipped the mattress over, powered off Emily's phone, put her shoes and glasses and phone and wallet in a grocery bag, and he went to bed. And the next day, he had breakfast with his sister, mimosas and omelette. Can you imagine? At midnight, Joseph turned his phone off. He killed Emily and then turned her phone off at 1 a.m. and he told police that she lay in bed for 5 to 10 minutes before he decided to get up, get his gun, and shoot her. He then turned his own phone back on at 1:30 a.m. Over the weekend, Joseph sent Emily 16 messages asking where she is, asking her to come back, getting angry with her for not answering his calls and texts. He stabbed Emily's body 18 times post-mortem, once to her chest, 8 times to her abdomen, and 9 times to her back. I mean, that is just insane to me. Like, so much rage and post-mortem, and even flipping her over? Like, what? Can you imagine? Thank you so much, Thork. Wow. So he dismembered her with a handsaw, and he placed her remains in 8 trash bags. He said he intended to discard her body in the woods. On Saturday morning, he texted his sister, "I just made some coffee. I can bring you some." He went for breakfast with his sister and her boyfriend at the time. When they asked where Emily was, he said that she was sleeping. He gave his sister a tattoo and made plans to visit some friends that afternoon. They went out to dinner that night in St. Albans. Okay, so shall I continue quickly? I'll read quickly. We'll go through this presentation real quick. We'll all be all caught up, right? So on Sunday, he met his sister for brunch after all that near Burlington, Vermont. He went back to his friend's house and he hung out at a bonfire. What? With Emily's body in the minibus. Yes. He needed his Jeep Wrangler to get into the woods to discard Emily's remains. So you know what he did? He drove his motorcycle, which was stored at a friend's house in St. Albans, 3 hours to her parents' home, where the Jeep was parked. When her mom and stepdad asked where Emily was, he told them that they got into a fight and that she left on Saturday. Like, if you don't know about this case, you do not know the audacity of this guy. It's like, I don't know if we've seen many like this. We've seen some terrible convicted killers, but this one is truly terrible. When her mom and stepdad asked her, then he said, yeah, they got into a fight and she left. And he sat there eating spaghetti. They reported Emily missing and convinced Joseph to turn on his location sharing services. The police contacted Joseph and asked where Emily is and where his van is, and he lied and said that the van isn't running well. It's at an auto shop, and he relayed the story about the argument, not knowing where Emily is. He then drove back to Vermont, and he texted his friend, Spencer Lemons, go check out his testimony on the trial replay if you haven't seen it, to let him know that he was coming by his house at 11:20 p.m. Police locate the van in St. Albans. Joseph asks his friend for a ride to go and get his van, and when they get to the van, they see troopers around the van, so he tells his friend to turn around. That friend saw something and said something. He's like, oh, hell no. I'm reporting this guy. I'm calling the police. So Joseph told his friend that the police are looking for Emily, that she's in the van, and that she's not alive. Spencer kicked him out of the car. Joseph asked his friend to shoot him and then said he just cannot go to prison. Spencer called 911 and let them know what Joseph said and where he last saw him walking into the woods. A trooper saw Joseph at a maple fields in St. Albans, Vermont. As they approached him, they say he appeared defeated. He was taken in for questioning, and within 2 minutes after being read his Miranda rights, he confessed to shooting and killing Emily. He later also confessed to dismembering her. He says the minute that they parked, Emily went berserk, throwing a Yankee candle at him, he says. And they had a fight, but then he decided, enough is enough. What? So we've gone over this timeline as well. This is on day 2. Okay, it's timestamp for you. It's right in the beginning, this whole presentation. I just wanted you to know a little bit. So the judge is it's actually spelled differently. Pacht, prosecutor Sally Adams and Sarah George, and the defense is Margaret Jantz. And the trial started December 4th of 2024 with jury selection. Opening statements we watched together from that day took place on December 5th of 2024. Joseph Ferlazzo, 44, pleaded not guilty. What's his defense? What was his defense? Self-defense. This guy literally claimed he acted in self-defense. Oh my goodness. If convicted, which he was, he faces up to life in prison. Remy the dog is now staying with Emily's mom. The trial lasted 5 days. He took up a lot of time on that stand though. Yeah, we were watching that and we looked at these police video interviews as well, which was absolutely ridiculous with the blankie and the donuts and the way he confessed and just everything about it. Now, her family's already won a civil lawsuit where he was ordered to pay $1.5 million for her wrongful death. The family's lawyer said there aren't many assets, but the family just wanted to make sure that they had a judgment on record. Okay, so now let's hear what the defense has to say.
Argument, and the first is to remind the court, which I'm sure the court is well aware of, that this is argument, not evidence. The state has made interpretations and made allegations about Mr. Ferlazzo.
I will say this: I'm only going to consider evidence that was introduced in this case, and not things that may very well be true, but are not part of the record.
That was my.
And
that's where I was going.
I'll further say that. Decisions counsel make to litigate certain issues pre-trial, I'm not going to consider that as a aggravating event either. There is a lot which the state has said that I am going to consider and have been considering, but
Thank you, Judge.
Those things I will not.
Thank you. Those were some of the things I was going to raise in response to the state's argument. The state, one thing that I would like to raise, though, is the state has repeatedly referred to his testimony at trial as lying and has endorsed the perjury allegation. He has not been charged with perjury. This court, I'm asking.
I object. Charge him now with perjury. Charge him now. He is a liar. Yeah, this guy lied on the stand. He did, because he made up all sorts of crap. If you haven't seen the behavior panel analyze his testimony, that's also very interesting. And they're like, this guy looks like he's bored on the stand while he's talking about everything, all these gruesome things.
To not consider perjury as...
So how would you have the court consider it if the court finds it entirely incredible? And I don't want to mince words, I do. How would you have the court interpret it?
So over the lunch break, I looked up 13 VSA 2901A, perjury by inconsistent statements. It has 3 prongs. That the person knowingly makes 2 or more statements under oath or affirmation which are material. That's the statement to the police and the statement at trial. And the statements were made within the period of statute of limitations. The one that I don't think there's evidence before the court is that the statements are inconsistent to the degree that the person necessarily believed one of them to be false. And I don't think there's evidence before the court that Mr. Ferlazzo...
So how do you interpret how he could... I'm fascinated in this question. I wish Dr. Powell would have discussed it. I asked him just a few questions. He didn't think much of the amnesia post-clarity. But how do you interpret that he has a detailed memory of something vastly different, which is much more consistent with all of the evidence, and then over the course of a few years has amnesia for almost every event, except...
Look at the defense's face, like, yes, okay. I really like this judge. Isn't he just adorable? True Crime with the Sarge is with us. If you guys haven't subscribed to True Crime with the Sarge, you better. You won't regret it. You said you don't, True Crime with the Sarge said you don't get charged with perjury until after court. Okay, I'm going to look for that. Meaning I'm waiting for more charges, please. Perjury, yes. Also, Joe Jackalote, True Crime with the Sarge, has a live stream set up for tomorrow where himself and Josh Zeman are going to be discussing more about the Long Island serial killer case. So make sure you go and catch that. All right, let's continue to listen to these arguments.
Different version now for what occurred.
So I certainly am not a psychologist. I'm just a lawyer. Neither is the state. And to ascribe his motives in the inconsistent statements to deliberate deception, I don't think anyone in this courtroom can do. He testified that he had been drinking constantly. He testified to that on the stand. And for a chronic alcoholic, my layperson's understanding is that they can be functional if they are, if I may, chronic alcoholics. So the fact that no one else may have noticed that he was constantly, continuously intoxicated over the course of the weekend is not surprising from a layperson's experience having been doing this job. His testimony was a few weeks after the event, he began having dreams about what happened and remembered more clearly than what he said to the police. Now, we have all seen the video, and he appears to be quite rational in the video. That's my explanation, because it's all that's what Mr. Ferlazzo testified to. He began to remember after the fact, after he talked to the police.
So would you agree with the court statement that either he's intentionally lying, or he has done whatever he needs to do to psychologically be able to live with himself and has essentially reinvented a story.
So I can't agree with either of those, Judge, because his testimony was not to that effect.
Okay.
I'm not a psychologist.
Good enough.
All I know is what he testified to. He remembered it. Whether that is a function of his having to live with his own actions, I'm not qualified to say, and I don't think the court is either.
Okay.
His testimony is what it is. But to ascribe it to being a deliberate lie, I don't think there's sufficient evidence before this court, which there has to be a preponderance of evidence in sentencing, and the burden is not on him about any facts that are alleged for the court to take them into consideration for sentencing.
Okay.
And I don't think there's any evidence before the court. There's speculation and assumption about his motivations, about the inconsistent statements. That's all. There's no evidence that he is deliberately lying, and I don't think the court can consider that. And I'm going to refer the court to State v. Blackmer, which is a 2025 case.
You have the site?
I'll give you the citation.
Stefan says, we know, Margaret, we know.
2025 WL 1009533. And in addition to repeating what the court already knows, that it has to be an individualized sentence based on the facts and the defendant's personality, that any uncharged conduct by the defendant must be disclosed sufficiently in advance of sentencing to allow an adequate opportunity for rebuttal. The court may take it into account only if it specifically finds each fact objected to, and we do object to the allegation that he was lying, has been shown to be reliable by a preponderance of the evidence. And it is not his obligation to disprove. So I don't think that the court, and I'm asking the court and would object if the court considers deliberate lying and AKA perjury in fashioning its sentence.
Okay.
So then,
Ma'am, I think they can forget about the lying. We could put that aside because the murdering and dismemberment is bad enough for the judge to consider for sentencing.
let me go back.
But he did lie.
Yes, we asked for a split of 15 years, and I fully recognize that that may be considered wholly and unduly lenient given all the facts of this case. The justification is that voluntary manslaughter was one of the lesser included charges. The jury did not agree, and I respect the jury's decision without question, but I do think that his testimony about passion provocation was consistent both to in his statement to the police and his testimony. And because of that, I think there is some recognition and weight that the court can, not must, but can in its discretion, give to his understanding and experience of what happened. So the voluntary manslaughter, as the court and the state know, maximum is 15 years. I think my expectation is that the court will find other factors that negate the request, but that's the basis of that request. And I included conditions of probation should the court decide on a split of whatever length. So that's our basis for the 15 years. As the court knows...
Yeah, this is not voluntary manslaughter. Oh my goodness, it's premeditated murder, shooting, stabbing, dismemberment. Yeah, 15 years. I don't think so.
And I know the state went through a list of factors, but the traditional factors the court must consider are punishment, specific deterrence, general deterrence, and rehabilitation. Incarceration is punishment. The duration of that incarceration is primarily what's before the court today. I posit that incarceration of any length is extremely difficult, and that people who are incarcerated, their lives are so different from being out in the community, even if they're under conditions of supervision. So the punishment portion of what the court has to consider is the length of incarceration that this deserves. As far as deterrence, general deterrence, the court and the state usually say, send a message to the community that this conduct will not. I am unaware of any statistic or documentation that this is effective in deterring other people from committing crimes. Specific deterrence is quite different. It takes this individual out of society so as not to harm anyone else. And that is a consideration for the court. Rehabilitation is the last of the traditional factors. Mr. Ferlazzo has indicated that he now knows that he has had substance abuse issues for years. He is willing to undergo treatment, both for mental health and for alcohol and drug use. There's no evidence before the court, primarily because of his lack of a criminal record, that he wouldn't comply with that an instruction from the court to undergo and continue for the rest of his life any kind of counseling. This is a man who reached 42 years old with no criminal record. I understand how the state is interpreting the letters of reference, but these are all people who experienced contact with him in a nonviolent and, in fact, supportive and gentle way. The fact of no criminal history is very important, and it indicates that he's able to conform his conduct with the requirements of law. It also indicates that there's no indication that he couldn't comply with future court orders. He developed his profession, and contrary to it being used to, as the state said, lure young women, he was a respected and well-known tattoo artist who earned a reasonable income from that profession. He certainly could go back to that profession if and when he's safely released.
No. Stop saying safely released. How about no? I mean, to murder and dismember someone, wow, that's bad. I don't know if you can rehabilitate that, in my opinion. But don't worry, he'll be doing plenty of tattooing in prison. Okay, especially so that he can survive prison. I'm sure that's a skill that could come in handy there, unfortunately. But wow, yeah, Barbara answers no rehabilitation will change this guy. Sure.
Back into society. There's a lot made of his victim bashing, and he's telling the court and the community what he remembers, his reality. There's nothing else he can do. He cannot, just because he's been convicted, now abandon his claim of self-defense and say, oh, okay, I just made it up. This is what's real for him. That's why he testified to it under oath.
Self-defense.
But even if that's true, isn't that one of the things the state's pointing is so scary about the case? If he can create a reality for which things that aren't very real become real in his mind as justification for behavior.
Well,
Isn't that a problem?
no, because the court is assuming that his version is not true, and I'm not disputing the verdict. The jury has made a determination of what they believe is credible, but only he knows what actually happened. And
So, is she saying that if somebody throws a Yankee Candle at you, that's your reality, and argues with you and says, I don't want to be with you anymore? Then what? His reality is he can just act in self-defense. Really? Self-defense? And then put a pillow over his wife's head? She was only 2 years old, and shoot her twice? And then go out, come back in, and then stab her 18 times post-mortem. And then go out, have some mimosas, breakfast, hang out with his sister, come back, dismember her. And then go hang out with his friends, have some bonfire time. Wow, he sure goes in and out of this reality a lot, huh? That is so scary. This is not a safe person to have in society.
for the court to decide that he's fantasizing or making it up, essentially just so he can live with himself, I don't think there's a basis for that. So to say that, is it a problem that he's essentially reinventing reality? I don't think there's any testimony or evidence that that's the case, other than the fact that the jury didn't.
I'll give you a couple of soft examples.
Sure.
He claimed.
Before the soft examples, let me give a hard one. If you look at the case of Rex Heuermann, an alleged serial killer, he's not convicted yet, the defense would also be like, he's never committed a crime. I mean, how many convicted serial killer cases are there where the person has no criminal record? Or even if we look at Madeline Soto's case, look at Stefan Stearns, you know what I mean? No, there's no criminal record. They just weren't caught. Who knows what this guy got up to in his life? He just wasn't caught for whatever he may have done. There's allegations of sexual assault and all sorts of things from people, emailing me, people that have encountered him. I even interviewed one of those people. It's on the playlist, right? And I don't know if that's a valid argument. I'm not snarking necessarily at the defense because I know that they're just doing their job, but holy crap, that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit far. It's a little bit much.
And it was all about this image. He claimed they arrived, I think, at 5:30 while it was still light. And he really requested Emily to go out for a walk with him. Mm-hmm. And it was still light out, and let's do that. And then but she didn't want to. And then again at sunset to do that. I think the uncontroverted evidence is they arrived at, I think, 7:19, well after sunset that night. It's just that, so there's an image he's created for himself one way or another that doesn't seem to be at all connected with what really happened.
Well, I understand the court's example, but frankly...
Here's Emily's dad, mom, I don't know if that's her brother, maybe, but some of her family members sitting here, and I see they're all wearing red, and they've got a badge on with Emily's face on it. Shame.
Not remembering what time of day...
It was a soft example, but...
I hear you, Judge, and I appreciate that the court has that recollection, but that to me is such a qualitative difference from remembering the nature of the relationship and what happened that night and the following days that lots of people forget what time they arrived somewhere.
Okay.
And I'm not persuaded that that's...
I like how the judge is like, okay.
a factor that means he's reinventing reality. Okay, so what sets this case apart in my mind are obviously the postmortem from other homicides, or the postmortem injuries, and the court must consider them. I understand how horrific they are, and my condolences to the family and friends. This was horrible, and I know the court has to consider that. I'm just My point is that as horrible as though that conduct was, it is one of several factors the court has to consider, not necessarily the controlling one. Albeit, I mean, and admittedly, it's terrible. And I understand the court would have to consider it very seriously. My point is that it's not the only factor. So then, as the court knows, and case law confirms, the court's responsibility is to balance the facts of the case with his character and personality. The state's interpretation of his personality is that he is an egomaniac who lures women into dangerous situations, but that's not what you heard from the people who wrote letters on his behalf. And that is supported by the fact that he had no criminal record up until this tragic event. So in terms of...
You mean like his cellmate that wrote a letter? We're going to hear these letters about his character. The cellmate with 2 prior convictions? Oh, okay, well, we shall listen to that.
Balancing, finding the right balance. The court has a very difficult job. I don't envy the court in trying to find what's just and fair in terms of the facts of this case, the ability for Mr. Ferlazzo to safely rejoin society at some point before he's 80 or 90 years old, under extremely strict supervisions, which would continue for the rest of his life, and the period of incarceration. So he has something he wants to read to the court about how this experience has affected him, and that's all I...
All right, everybody, it's time for an outfit change. It's time to put your snarky pants on, if you don't have them on already. He's going to talk. Oh, my word.
I have to say right now, and I would like Mr. Ferlazzo to...
Oh, here we go. Are we ready for this? I don't know if we are. He doesn't take any responsibility for anything. What is he going to say? Oh, no, here we go.
Many things have been said about me. I can say I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a friend. Family is always going to be a priority to me. I'm an artist, I'm a coach, I'm a chef, I'm a hunter, I'm a biker, I'm an outdoorsman. This event doesn't define me or who I am. The history of my...
I'm sorry, this event, you mean the murder? This murder does define you. You're a convicted killer now, okay? So all of those things you said, that's nice. Just don't forget to say, and killer. Wow, okay.
Crime is that I've had parking tickets and speeding tickets. I've never assaulted people or hurt people.
Consider not
Sorry, I went back
necessarily
too
the
much.
controlling one. In terms...
I'm a coach, I'm a chef, I'm a hunter, I'm a biker, I'm an outdoorsman. This event doesn't define me or who I am. The history of my crime is that I've had parking tickets and speeding tickets. I've never assaulted people or hurt people. I try to see the good in everyone, so starting fights isn't in my nature. I admit that my reaction was too strong, and it's haunted me every day and every night. My drinking was a real problem, and I had fear and broken trust to make a bad situation worse. We were visiting family, making time to help out our loved ones when everything fell apart. This event has taken from those people the family and friends who did nothing to deserve the heartache and drama this has thrust upon them. I'm so sorry for my actions, and I wish I made better choices. Life is not perfect, and we weren't either. Moving forward, I will commit to doing my best in her memory.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ferlazzo.
Oh, my word. That was terrible. I think that was almost worse than when he testified. What? No. Yeah, Kate Matthews says, why can't you take responsibility? Wow. I don't even know what to, I'm going to watch that again later. And snark even more like, what? We still have about 2 hours to go of today's sentencing hearing. Sure.
So if,
I was going to say more.
Is that okay?
Is there more that he wants to say?
yes, this is, Mr. Ferlazzo wrote something specifically to address Mrs. Bass, Adrian.
Please don't. Oh no, now he wants to address Emily's parents. Stop it, dude, just sit down, please. Oh no. Here we go.
Adrian, I'm so incredibly sorry for what happened. Emily was my whole world, and she convinced me that I was in jeopardy. I reacted too aggressively, and it has been the worst mistake in the history of my time. Wishing anything else would have played out is a part of every day since. The whole thing was so fast that instantly every possibility and future we planned was gone. I drank to numb myself from the most traumatic event in my life. Little did I know that we'd all be suffering this loss in our own ways. It hurts for everyone who knew Emily and I. We weren't perfect, and our people have the burden of the mess we made. Praying for you and your family to find solace and peace in the wake of this nightmare, to move forward with a healthy path and thrive. Every day it will rain tears, but we can remember the good times and greet the sun again knowing we felt the love of our Emily.
Thomas T.H.
Okay, hold on, sir. I'm so sorry, Sarah. We still got to snark. What? Life isn't perfect, and neither will we. He literally said he wants to remember our Emily. He spoke to Emily's parents and said the words, remembering our Emily. Oh my goodness. And he's like, I reacted too aggressively. Too aggressively. And he makes like he was like drunk, and he just reacted too aggressively. She had, threatened him. What? She wanted to leave you. Wow. Yeah, Ashes, just sit down. Yeah, sit down, sir. And reacted too aggressively, and saying things happened. It just happened so fast. It was an entire weekend where he had murdered Emily, left the camper, came back, stabbed her 18 times post-mortem, front and back. Okay, and then went out again, came back, dismembered her. Yeah. That's a lot of action. There's so much rage. It's not like this happened so fast. I can't even believe what we just heard. That was insane. Sure. Okay, now this is a psychologist, a forensic psychologist testifying for the defense, talking about Joseph Ferlazzo's substance abuse disorder and PTSD. So you can keep your snarky pants on. The banner will pop up shortly on top.
O-M-A-S, Powell, P-O-W-E-L-L.
And I know that many here know you because of your experience and reputation, but I do need to briefly go through your background because there are others in the community who don't know who you are. So how are you currently employed?
I'm a forensic psychologist in private practice in Shelburne, Vermont. I've been doing this for 20 years with partners, and we conduct evaluations of referred clients by attorneys, either in the civil or criminal world, and testify as requested and consult with DCF, corrections, and other departments upon request.
Have you testified in other cases concerning a psychological evaluation of the defendant?
Yes.
Approximately how many? More than 10?
More than 100.
More than 100. Thank you. And do you also teach?
I have in the past. Right now I'm on faculty, and we're supervising interns for a doctoral program at Antioch. And in the past I've taught at UVM and St. Michael's College, and also at Castleton State College.
And prior to, I'm just looking.
So just quickly to pause, just so you know what's still coming up. So we're going to hear from the psychologist. We're going to hear character letters read about Joseph Ferlazzo. We're then going to hear the victim impact statements, and Emily's mom will tell us so much about her. We're going to hear from her best friend, and we're going to hear how beautifully Emily sang. And then we're gonna be watching the judge sentence his ass. There's no other way to say it. Sentence him, judge. And the judge is so nice, so professional about it all. But yeah, he's gonna sentence him at the end of this stream. So we have 2 hours and 46 minutes of court footage to work through, and we're only about 52 minutes in. So if you don't have plans for the rest of your Saturday, you're going to be here for a while still. Thank you so much for being here.
Through your curriculum vitae. So currently, since 2004, you have been a founding partner of Vermont Forensics. Is that correct?
Vermont Forensic Assessment is the name of our practice, yes.
Yes, forensic, I apologize. But before that, you also were in private practice as a clinical psychologist. Is that correct as well?
I've worked as a clinical psychologist in a couple of different settings, one up in St. Albans for several years, 2 or 3 years, and also during my internships and residencies when I was doing my doctorate.
So would it be fair to say that you have more than 20 years experience as a clinical psychologist, and part of that, or perhaps most of it, has been in conducting forensic evaluations?
Yes.
How did you become involved in this case?
A request of your office to do an evaluation.
Yeah, your request, defense. I've just sped it up to 1.1 speed, okay?
Meet with Mr. Ferlazzo.
And what was your understanding of what kind of an evaluation that you were being asked to undertake?
I think the goal was to consider the social history, the background, the addiction issues, and some of the psychological dynamics that might have been relevant to his charges and conviction, and try to broaden counsel's understanding of who this man is and what makes him tick, and what kind of background information would be useful to understand in understanding context.
And so as to provide the court with necessary information in order to fashion a fair and just sentence?
I think so.
So did you meet with Mr. Ferlazzo?
I did.
And as a result, did you conduct testing during that evaluation?
Yes.
And can you provide the court with the results of your testing of Mr. Ferlazzo?
Following my normal practice, I administered 4 particular instruments, as we call them. 2 of them were general personality instruments and inventories, and 2 were specific to issues related to trauma. The first 2 were the personality assessment inventory and the inventory of self-concept that augments some of the findings you find in, excuse me, in the general psychological map that the PAI gives you. The findings were that one of the first things we look at in these matters is the validity and credibility of responding. In other words, is the person either exaggerated or not exaggerated, minimized or not minimized, or been inconsistent in their answering patterns? And the findings on all of these tests were that Mr. Ferlazzo did not try to dissimulate or otherwise manipulate the results to try to fashion a given outcome that he wanted. So they were credible, valid responses. On the personality assessment inventory, the largest spike on the scales by far was substance use and alcohol abuse. That one was very, very clinically significant in terms of its height, as we call it in the scales. He also had an elevation on stimulation seeking, and I think proneness to boredom, and some of the more personality-based issues that we see throughout his life, and some of the behaviors that he has engaged in with respect to relationships being, since his youth, being somewhat tumultuous. There was no indication of major mental illness or what we would think of as some kind of mitigation around sanity. There was no competency questions. He presented.
Not insane, convicted killer, just completely, I don't even know what word to use, evil. Mary said, as we say in the South, shut your pie hole, sir. That's to Joseph Ferlazzo, right? We did not make a mess of things. You made a mess of things. Horrible to the core, right? If you guys are wondering what I just put in my mouth, it's this. This is how you know I've settled into Switzerland. I have a whole can here of Ricola, huh? Okay, let's continue to listen to this.
And it is an intelligent man who was able to understand the demands that I was asking of him. So in terms of the general psychological profile, that was the finding.
So let me go back because I neglected to ask you what materials you reviewed in preparation for meeting with Mr. Ferlazzo.
I reviewed the charging documents by the state, including the affidavit. I reviewed the PSI. I reviewed the sentencing memoranda and the request for a new trial that had been submitted by defense. I looked at the transcripts of the interview with police, and I was given a copy, but it did not completely review the trial transcript. Those were the documents that I was working with.
And did you attempt?
Documents. Did you watch, though? Did you watch the police interview? Did you watch his testimony? Because that was interesting. Bia Grinton said, keep in mind his opinion is paid for by the defense. Earlier, Pamela Duval said, and how much were you paid to testify today, sir? I want to know as well. Ask that question. That would be a good question right now.
To reach out to any collateral sources for interviews?
I did.
And were you successful in making contact with any collateral sources?
I spoke with the therapist who had worked with Emily and Mr. Ferlazzo for a brief period of time.
Any other sources?
No.
Did you reach out to anyone in his family?
I tried.
And were you successful?
No.
So you mentioned that you were able to have a conversation with the couples therapist they went to for a brief period of time. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is her name?
Marsha Webster.
Did she provide any background information on Joseph that would be helpful to the court to know?
I believe so.
And what was that?
She described the relationship as one that was tumultuous and stormy, but that they both had an interest in trying to work on issues. They both brought a fair amount of trauma into the relationship, which surfaced during their work in the therapy with her. She described Emily as a very sweet person who was trying to create a safe haven in the relationship. And she described Joseph as somebody who was trying to make the relationship a place of safety for him, but also having significant trust issues.
And was there any other description she provided to you about her observation of him?
He did come make another run at speaking with her by himself without her during the course of the time that they worked together. They met 3 times online with her. It was telepsychology. And he initiated a 4th contact on his own with her. But I think the issues really were ones of trying to understand how to calm down the relationship and to deal with the fact they both brought a fair amount of baggage into the relationship, which was playing out in their relationship.
Did she say to you that he was alone?
The relationship was so quick, though. You can't believe from 0 to murder, it was like over the span of 18 months in total. How scary is that? Gerda said earlier, hy moet net tronk toe. Hy moet net tronk toe voetsak en klaar kry. He must just go. He must just go to prison, go away, and finish this. Yes, Gerda.
Lost boy?
She did mention lost. Felt like he was struggling to find himself.
Okay, thank you for that information. Mr. Dr. Powell. So in addition to conducting testing of Mr. Ferlazzo, you met with him in person, correct?
Yes, and I didn't talk about in testing the trauma scales yet.
Oh, okay.
I just want to put a bookmark in that.
Yes, I would like to hear more about that.
Okay. The two trauma scales were the detailed assessment of post-traumatic stress and the trauma symptom inventory, which are two standards in our field that address both specific and general signs of trauma and suggestions of PTSD. The detailed assessment of post-traumatic stress is specific to trying to diagnose whether PTSD is present or not, and it goes through the criteria for the diagnosis and systematically allows for a clinician to try to say whether the answers are consistent with PTSD or not. The TSI is a trauma symptom inventory is a broader sweep of trauma that a person has in life. It doesn't necessarily anchor to one particular event. And the findings in those cases, again, were that the responses were credible. There was no indication of exaggeration or minimization. He met a criteria for two of the four criteria for PTSD on both of them, with elevations on intrusive experiences and defensive avoidance, which are two clusters of symptoms that are present in PTSD and which in his life, I think, reflected a childhood that was difficult and parenting that was inconsistent and stressed, and that for him it sort of laid the groundwork for a set of anxieties and concerns that played out later in relationships.
Okay, none of that is ever an excuse to kill anyone, let alone stab them post-mortem and dismember them.
And then any other tests that I've neglected to mention? Okay. So then in connection with your meeting with him, did you form any opinions or come to any conclusions that would be useful to the court about who Mr. Ferlazzo is?
Well, I think diagnostically I would say that he clearly meets criteria or met criteria for major substance abuse, marijuana and alcohol dependency at the time of the arrests in 2021. He also, I believe, had what I call sub-threshold post-traumatic stress disorder, which is, he did not meet full criteria, but he had elements of it that were present, which I believe were reflective of issues that he had grown up with. Particularly a mother who was quite stormy, and he bailed out of the house at an early age and carried with him, I think, some baggage, which played out in subsequent relations.
Oh, he had some baggage, you guys. I hate this part of the sentencing. You know, when it's like, shame, poor killer. Come on, shame. The poor family of Emily Ferlazzo sitting there, or Emily Jean, sitting there listening to all this crap, right? Ether Bunny said, thank you for all the cases you cover. This one is so upsetting. PTSD? Yeah, how did he score on the narcissistic scale?
I think he also, there's probably evidence of a personality disorder with elements of borderline and antisocial features that would play out, but he didn't meet full criteria for any one of them. But it's that sort of, there was some noise around those types of issues that I think had to be represented diagnostically.
Anything else that I've neglected to ask you that is...
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just so I'm clear, right now, are you only speaking from the assessments, or are we joining the clinical interview, which we haven't heard from a lot about yet?
Primarily the former, with elements of the latter.
And would I be correct in saying you wouldn't make specific opinions just based on the testing without doing clinical interviews?
Very much so.
Okay. Go
I have
ahead.
nothing else, thank you.
You have nothing further?
I have nothing further.
Okay. Ms. George?
Now I get to see the judge a little bit. He's so nice. And now the state is going to ask the psychologist some questions. Grill him. I don't mean it at him, but grill him anyway.
Sure.
Just very briefly, Judge. Dr. Powell, I just want to confirm that you were unable to, or you didn't read through the trial testimony of this trial.
I sampled it. It was lengthy, and I did not go through the whole thing.
Okay. Would it impact your position in any way if there was testimony contrary to what Mr. Ferlazzo told you?
It would depend on the nature of the contradiction and how it fit into what the impressions I already had would be.
Okay. And so your diagnosis, for lack of a better word, of the major substance abuse is based on Mr. Ferlazzo's statements to you about his use?
Well, I believe there was, in the transcript of the police reports, there was, I think they were talking, he was talking with the police when he was interviewed by them about the amount of drinking and smoking pot that he was doing at the time. But it seemed to me that that was big. And it also came up in talking with Marcia Webster, the therapist. She said that it was her opinion, or from talking to them, it appeared that he was engaging in large amounts of what she called wake and bake. In other words, 24 hours a day, he'd be smoking pot and drinking.
Okay. And so, again, if there was trial testimony that disputes that the weekend of this incident, for example, that he was not heavily drinking, if at all, and not smoking marijuana constantly, would that impact your thoughts?
It could. I wouldn't. I'd have to.
Look at him, you guys. He's a victim. Look how he sits there feeling sorry for himself. Oh, my goodness.
Sort of consider how the pieces fit together.
And I assume that you did not review the deposition transcript or trial testimony of Mr. Ferlazzo's sister, Nicole?
That's correct.
And if she testified that there was no child abuse happening in the household, would that change your position?
That would be important information, and I will say that my evaluation was not as corroborated as I wish it could have been if I'd gotten return phone calls from the brother, the mother, and other people in his life. I just didn't get callbacks, and that's usually a very important source of information for the very reason I think you're raising.
Okay, thank you.
I've got some questions for you. First of all, trust issues.
The judge has questions too.
That Dr. Webster, Ms. Webster, identified. Did she say what the basis was, what information she relied on in reaching the determination that he had trust issues? And was that specific to Ms. Ferlazzo, general to life, or both?
General to life, that he had grown up with difficulty believing people when they said things to him, and that part of his preferred lifestyle was polyamorous, and that led to relationships where he just didn't know what people were thinking at any one time, or he couldn't. I mean, it led to mistrust.
Did she indicate how that mistrust manifested, if at all, in his relationship with Ms. Ferlazzo?
She did not comment on that.
Did you get into that at all with Mr. Ferlazzo?
I did not talk at great length about the offense, and in terms of his time with Emily, he did speak of having ambitions to have a family with her and of wanting to quiet down the relationship. He spoke to not wanting to be drunk and stoned all the time if they were going to have a family, and that for him was an objective that he wanted to get to, but he hadn't yet.
Are you aware enough from reading the transcripts of police statements and the trial transcripts that in the police statements he gave fairly detailed account not only of the event but what happened after the event, and at trial he gave a completely different version of the event and had minimal to no memory about much of which he had testified, including giving a police statement for 2.5 hours. Did you get into that at all with Mr. Ferlazzo?
I didn't. I was still getting to know the case when I met with him. His position with me was that his memory was impaired about what had happened, and bits and pieces of it were floating forward to him, but not in a consistent fashion. And he did describe an impaired memory about that time. He attributed it to substance use.
I have heard that before when people don't have a memory to begin with. What struck me was having a very clear memory on a Tuesday after the Saturday morning killing, and then having almost no memory for the same events that were corroborated after. And I wonder if you could comment on that at all, or whether that really is beyond what you were able to assess.
I would say, generally speaking, that would be an unusual presentation to have a memory deficit in that order. It might go the other way around, but not that way. And so I don't think that that would be a credible presentation.
Good questions, Judge.
Any other questions that anybody has?
No, thank you, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Powell.
Okay. Time for the victim impact statements. I put it in this order so that we don't have to now first listen to the character letters read by the defense. We need a break from this attention on Ferlazzo, Joseph Ferlazzo, the convicted killer. Now we're going to hear all about Emily. So before we go to this, a lot of people are asking what happened to Joseph Ferlazzo's stepmother. So I'll quickly remind you, okay? Her name was Young Hee Lim Ferlazzo. The stepmother of Joseph Ferlazzo Jr. was murdered on October 25th of 2009. It's an unsolved case. And this was in Upper Gwinnett Township, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. She was 39 years old at the time of her death. According to reports, she was found dead in her apartment with multiple stab wounds. Unsolved, okay. To her torso. Very similar to Emily Ferlazzo's post-mortem stabbings, Okay, so her husband, Joseph Ferlazzo Sr., reported the death to the police, stating that he discovered her body after returning home from grocery shopping shortly before midnight. No arrests have been made in the case, and it remains an open, unsolved homicide as of the latest available information. And why did this come up again is because they said the murder of Joseph Ferlazzo's stepmother gained renewed attention in 2021 when he was charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, Emily. And he was initially a person of interest that the police were talking to. I can't remember, we went over it during the trial as well, exactly how old he was at the time and all of that, but yeah, it's quite interesting, right? Okay, now let's hear the victim impact statements.
Morning.
Good morning, Judge. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak and share my impact.
Of course.
I have worked in healthcare supporting critical patient care systems my entire career. For 20 plus years, I've worked to help people in the Boston area at several clinics and trauma centers. I architect and implement data center level solutions to help my hospitals better serve their community. This involves understanding large, complex architectures with possibly thousands of parts, knowing how they interact, and being able to quickly diagnose and remediate issues by using that working memory and system thinking to find the broken cogs in the IT machine that is a modern hospital. I first met Emily in 2012. She thought I looked like the star of the then popular movie Despicable Me. So to mock her mom's new boyfriend, she started calling me Gru. So I started calling her Minion.
Shame. So this is her stepdad. In all the reports, they say her father. But this was her stepdad, just to clarify for anyone saying, wait. Why does he say met her in 2012 and all that, right?
We used those nicknames daily up until her death. Emily was my minion. I was her Gru. Now, every time I see a Minion toy, sticker, or advertisement, I think of her. What I wouldn't give to call out for my minion and to hear her answering Gru. Can you imagine how painful every new movie in the Minions franchise is? They should be events that she and I would celebrate together. We should be dressing up, being silly, and being embarrassing. Now they are just reminders of the most painful day of my life. In October 2021, my daughter was murdered. And then it got worse. The murder was the worst day of my life, but it was the damage to my remaining family and the everyday suffering that created my PTSD. The first year was a struggle to survive. I can't recall much beyond flashes from late 2021 until sometime in 2023. Many of those flashes involved seeing Emily in crowds, and I yearned desperately to have just one more memory with her. The second year was consumed by anger. I was furious at the defendant for shattering my perfectly peaceful and comfortable life. I felt powerless at the callous actions of another person that completely took control of my life. The third year was marked by a realization of just how severely I was affected and the profound impact it had on my life and relationships. I've been an engineer for years. I think like an engineer. I problem solve. I multitask. The trauma changed how my brain works, and it keeps changing over time. Those major areas of change are my working memory, my multitasking, I've developed tunnel vision and a severe instance of linear thinking and rigidity. None of those are good for my job. Most of my coworkers use their brains more than their bodies for their jobs. So having significant brain damage is like losing the use of both arms while working construction. No matter what, it's going to cause some challenges. I can't debate solutions or handle conflicts as well because my brain is so rigid that looking beyond my assumptions is sometimes impossible. When I'm feeling better, it takes an effort of will to intentionally recognize that I'm making assumptions and need to start over. As an example, I was cooking dinner one night. It was burgers, so I had to coordinate getting several things ready at the same time. I looked at the mushrooms 3 separate times and thought, I need to cook those now. Then as soon as I look away, I completely forgot they existed. This is not an unusual occurrence in my life, unfortunately. It happens multiple times per day now. That would have never happened before the murderer ruined our lives. The same thing happens at work. I'll look at a log entry and think I should go check in vCenter, and then tab switch to it and have no idea what I was going to do. I have to write lots of notes, so I then go check my notes and remind myself what I was thinking. The working memory is just non-existent after the PTSD. Shockingly, this has caused my work quality to suffer and has had significant impacts on my ability to maintain critical systems responsible for patient care. This crime has also impacted people beyond those who are privileged enough to sit in front of this court and testify. My sister Amanda is Emily's aunt. She misses the opportunity to see what her niece would become and wishes she could tell Emily she is missed and loved. My mother Jill spent 50 years in nursing, and Emily was her only granddaughter and the only bit of family continuing the nursing legacy. She was looking forward to great grandkids and was excited about Emily's family planning and any future kids until Jill found out how incompetent the defendant was as a husband and potential father. She hoped that Emily would eventually marry someone worthy of grandkids. Even before October 2021, she didn't want Emily to reproduce with the murderer. She never met the defendant and only knew him from Emily's stories and still didn't like his control over her. I asked several of Emily's cousins who couldn't be here today to tell me what they want the court to know about this crime and its impact on our family's children. Sweet young Alexis was born in 2019 and never actually met her cousin because they lived on opposite sides of the country. She says she is upset she never got to know her cousin, even though she sounds awesome. Lucas is Alexis's big brother. He was born in 2015 and did get to spend time with his cool older cousin. He says that losing Emily still makes him upset and he misses her very much and wishes he could tell her all about his interests. Kai was a teenager living in North Carolina when Emily was reported missing. While we were searching Vermont to try and find our daughter, he was powerless to help. When the state police came to us and told us she was deceased, his mother, Aunt Nadia, woke the kids. They all got in the car and drove 18 hours straight to Vermont to be with family while we all tried to grieve and understand what was happening. Kai says that since we never get to see Emily again, then the murderer needs to go away and also never be seen again. Cousin Jade is Kai's younger sister and idolized her cool older cousin. She had grown up around Emily before moving to North Carolina. When asked if she wanted to say anything, she was so overcome with grief that she wasn't able to express herself, so I'm writing this in her honor. She misses her cousin and wishes desperately that she could come back. Aunt Nadia is the mother of Kai and Jade and has been trying to navigate the tricky path of explaining why this murder isn't normal. People don't usually kill and dismember others. It's hard to believe that when it's your cousin that is gone. Nadia says he has taken away our faith and hope in humanity. If he could not feel empathy for a 5-foot little girl when he was a grown-ass man, and then shame on him. He not only took her life, he murdered her. And that wasn't enough for him. He also took the opportunity for us to even see her or say goodbye. Family wasn't allowed to see her remains due to the condition of the body. We couldn't see her or touch her one last time or say goodbye and we love you. We aren't here to see him. We are here today to ensure justice is done for Emily. The least the system can do is ensure he never gets out and hurts anyone ever again. Emily had a lot of animals in her life. We always had cats, starting from when we first met, and she and her mom had just adopted a delightful fluff ball named Oreo. Then she and I went and rescued 2 guinea pigs from somebody Emily knew that needed to rehome them. Then she and her best friend Lauren rescued 2 barn kittens named Loki and Freya and brought them home. They called us from the car and they announced that they had these 2 kittens and would be home soon. Surprise! Emily outlived the guinea pigs and we buried them together. Oreo died 2 years after Emily was murdered. She never got to say goodbye. The kittens are still alive and living with us, and every day I give Loki a hug and remember how much Emily loved animals. She wanted to save everyone. She would stop and move every turtle out of the road. I regret that when Adrian and I took a trip and swam with sea turtles that Emily couldn't go. We said she would love it and next time we should take her. There was no next time. In October 2021, Callie was then known as Remington. She went on a trip with her parents. She loves car rides. They are her favorite things. Then they parked and argued. She hates arguing and wants to get between the 2 people. Then her dad shot her mom. She is now terrified of gunshots and runs and hides at even distant gunfire. If it's close, she becomes a quivering ball of anxiety. She frantically checks on her people while trying to get them to hide with her. She couldn't save Emily and it broke her. None of us could save her and it broke us. Despite the convicted's claims to respect us, we had to civilly sue him and spent a year in court to get Callie back, despite the law being clear on ownership. He attempted to dispose of multiple vehicles by gifting them to his friends after the murder. As part of the suit, we got Emily's motorcycle and dog back, and the unlawfully gifted vehicles were clawed back and repossessed by their lenders. That suit cost us over $20,000 in a year of our lives. Even just seeing those people here in court for this trial has been hard because of just how much they wanted to take possession and profit from our daughter's murder. How they supplied the tools to dismember her corpse. How he did that gruesome work in their driveway with my daughter's blood draining down the shower drain into their lawn. How they still have the audacity to submit impact statements praising him while denying their own culpability. In October 2021, a golden retriever named Presley was turning 1 year old and about to be rejected as a breeder because she was too small. At the same time, a trainer in Emily's hometown was looking to get a dog to train intensively. Not necessarily as a service dog, but in that general direction. I eventually connected with that trainer when searching for someone to train a service dog for my wife, Adrian. She met and fell for Presley, and we paid significant amounts of money to get Presley trained as Adrian's service dog, specifically for the PTSD from this crime. I drove Adrian to many training sessions over the next year before Presley was at the level to be called a service dog and could come home with us. That was just in time for us to make the long trip to our son Matt's graduation from boot camp. Since Adrian's PTSD couldn't allow her to fly, we planned a multi-thousand-mile road trip with this just graduated service dog to Matt's graduation from boot camp in South Carolina. We couldn't have made that trip without Presley there to calm Adrian's frequent panic attacks. Adrian will speak about her impact, and I won't cover it here. The court is already well aware how much her daughter's murder impacted her. This crime has messed me up in ways therapists are still struggling to unpack just because this murderer felt he had the right to take another's life. As an example, he tattooed Emily's name on Adrian's back, so every time I see her back, I'm reminded of my lost daughter, the crippling damage to my wife, and that the murderer has left an indelible mark on our lives. The murderer has never acknowledged his actions and continues to deny the physical evidence of his crime. Someone who refuses to take responsibility for their actions is a huge risk to reoffend, and since personal responsibility is required to be a member of our society, I feel the murderer should never be allowed out. Thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Sure, that was so powerful. Oh my goodness, I forgot that the dog was with Emily and Joseph on the trip. And he left the dog in the camper van after he'd murdered Emily. Like, what? Oh my word, shame. So when he refers to Adrian, that's Emily's mom, and she's also going to be sharing her victim impact statements.
Judge, victim advocate Kathiria Farah, what was Karen Burns is going to read statements from two of Emily's brothers, Cody and Dylan.
Tell me their names again.
Cody and Dylan.
Dylan? Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Yep.
And which one is this
Cody
first?
Schwartz, brother.
Which one?
Cody?
Cody.
Okay, Cody, go ahead.
What impacted my life after my sister was killed? Well, let me tell you this. My sister and I never got along when she lived with my family because me and her always fought over attention from our dad. But once we matured and actually grew up, her and our dad had an inseparable relationship, like the strongest relationship out of all our siblings. My sister wasn't only my best friend, she was also my person I could talk to about anything and everything. She was always trying to push me to do better because she knew what everything was going to be like for me. She was my role model, she was my person, she was my best friend, and most importantly, she was my only sister. After she got killed, I dropped out of school and went straight to work, working a full-time job. I started drinking and vaping, smoking, to try to numb the pain. There's not a day that goes by where I think about her and just wish I could sit down and have at least one more conversation with her. And from her brother, Dylan Schwartz. My sister has been my best friend since I was born. She was there to help me learn my new first as I was growing up. As we grew up together, we grew close. Yes, some arguments, but hey, sister brothers have those. That's what we do. We knew we still loved each other during those moments. Joseph Ferlazzo killing my sister affected me in a lot of ways. Some I can't even explain, but have impacted me, my family, my learning ability, my behavior, and some I can't try to explain. He took my only sister that I have ever had, the best sister I could have ever asked for. He limited the memories I could have with her. He limited what could have been new adventures with her and I. Having my only sister gone has brought on a lot of depression, anger towards people. My life will never be the same without my only loving, smart, dedicated, talented sister gone.
Thank you.
I do like how Emily's dad didn't mention the convicted killer's name at all. Just called him the murderer, right? Yeah, exactly. We don't ever want to remember his name again.
Joseph Ferlazzo took away my closest friend.
So again, you can see from the banners, this is Emily's best friend, Lauren Echelberger.
Ever had. I met Emily in the second grade in the girls' bathroom, and she had called me by my twin's name because they had been in the same classroom. She was confused how my sister had changed outfits so quickly, and I responded by telling her that my name was Lauren, her identical twin. From that moment on, we were best friends. More than that, Emily was my soul sister. We fought like sisters, we laughed like sisters, we shared our deepest secrets with each other, secrets that I didn't even share with my own twin. We shared the same interests, cross country, track and field, singing, going to the beach, shopping, and all things sparkly. Like Forrest Gump once said, Emily and I were like peas and carrots. This feels like a stupid analogy, but now it feels as if someone has taken away all of the peas on this planet. The sparkle, the light, and the burning fire that emanated from Emily. The voice she carried and the accomplishments she had yet to achieve. They were taken. Emily loved with her entire being, and it was taken advantage of, broken down, and manipulated until it was snuffed out by a sad, angry, despicable, and lonely man who was given a love far greater than he deserved. Joe is a coward. A coward who couldn't accept that Emily would never bow down to him. I've heard that he prefers to go by Giuseppe rather than his first name, Joseph. I wonder, does he think that will allow him to escape his reality? If changing our reality was as easy as changing our name, I would have done so a long time ago. If it meant having a reality where Emily is still alive. That isn't reality, though. The reality is that now, every year on my birthday, October 16th, I am grieving. I'm not happy, even when I celebrate. See, that joy has been robbed from me because I am reminded that every year that I get older, it is the same day that my best friend, her life ceased to exist. I am reminded of how one of my biggest fears, losing my best friend, became my reality. I lost a part of my soul on October 16th, 2021. My best friend, Emily. And even almost 4 years later, I still can't quite believe it's true. I have night terrors almost every night, involving Emily coming back to life in obscure situations just to wake up and remember that she's gone. My mental state hasn't been the same, and I still have severe emotional breakdowns. Alongside the memory of her living is also the memory of the horrors I saw during the trial. How Joseph just couldn't get enough after shooting her twice through a pillow because he was too much of a coward to look her in the face. But he stabbed her 18 times and reduced her to body pieces in a trash bags, sitting in a tiny bathroom. He took away a person who mattered, who was an absolute light in this world, with goals that were supposed to be achieved. He lied and twisted the truth, pathetically, might I add, during his trial, expecting a different outcome besides the one most deserved. Unfortunately for him, the truth always finds a way to expose a person for who they are. Which is something Emily also always made sure was true as well. Joe is undoubtedly a dangerous predator who I believe would kill again if he had the opportunity. For these reasons, I ask that he be given the maximum sentence of life without parole. And
Okay, I think she's gonna play a song now from what I saw. So wow, that was so powerful as well. But how absolutely heartbreaking. I'm glad she called him a coward 2 to 3 times. I hope he felt that.
if I can, I would like to play a song that I wrote 5 months after Emily died. Because it's the only way I could write a note to our friendship. And it sounds shitty for the record.
It's crazy how 4 months, now 5 months goes by so fast. I hardly know what to do, and I'm still feeling so torn. My world went from beneath me, I know nothing at all. Everything is over, and I'm crumbling inside. I feel like I'm sleepwalking, lost in a dream, until I see that sweet sparrow flying above me. It leads me to a maple in the back of a field, so I rest among the daisies, and my thoughts begin to reel. Ooh. ask each other questions in the middle of the night. So I look up to the branches, I connect with that sparrow's eyes. It flies high up above me, nowhere in sight. But then it sings its song for me, and I'm reminded of the time when we drove an hour to the ocean in the middle of the night. Sweet sparrow, can you pass a message along? Tell Emily that I love her, and I'm doing just fine. My heart breaks when I think about her, and everything else going on. But I promise you will never do her wrong. Oh no. Be sure to tell her I can feel her flying with you, and I can hear her in your song. Tell her I wrote this song for her, and probably a million more. One day I'll be back with her, it won't be for a while. I know that when that day comes, I'll hear your sweet sparrow song.
Thank you so much.
Sure, my shame. So that was a song that Emily's best friend wrote for her 5 months after she was murdered, which that was a beautiful song, and I'm sure it helped her in some way cope with her grief. I mean, it must be so much. Now we're going to hear from Emily's mom, Adrian, who also testified at the trial on the first day. So if you didn't see that, you can go back to the trial days. It was only a 5-day trial, and every day is, of course, time-stamped for you and defluffed and all of that. So you can go back if you missed this trial and you're only here with us today and catch up on that. The only thing that's not as part of the trial that we did watch together is Joseph Ferlazzo's sister's testimony, because she reached out to myself and also to the court feed operators and asked that they remove her testimony because it was just so traumatic for her to even be associated with Joseph Ferlazzo. So I had also edited that out. Everything else is there though and time-stamped. Sure. Okay, so this is Adrian Bass, Emily's mother. And she's going to tell us a lot about Emily now, and we're going to see Emily sing too.
Hello, Judge. My name is Adrian Bass, and I am Emily's mom. I'm going to tell you about my beautiful daughter, Emily, and the impact her murder has had on me as her mother. Writing this statement has been a near impossible task. I've written multiple notes and jotted down countless thoughts that I wanted to share. I've started and restarted again and again. Each attempt resulted in finding myself lost in the anguish of why of her murder and dismemberment. Okay, so on July 25th, 1999, at 5:17 a.m., my beautiful blue-eyed baby girl Emily was born. She was born 2 months after I completed my freshman year of college, and 2 months before my 19th birthday. She was perfect in every way. As she grew, she enjoyed friendships, singing. She could sing the socks off of any song she connected with. Painting, riding her bike, being a big sister, and dance classes. In high school, she followed her dream, her love of cosmetology. She wanted to do hair, nails, and everything glittery. She loved going to the beach, singing in talent shows, and searching endlessly for the perfect fancy dress for the dance or prom. Emily challenged herself by running with her cross-country and track teams. When it wasn't her turn to compete, She was the one everyone could hear shouting and cheering on the sideline from for her teammates. She wasn't afraid to be a cheerleader. Great things come in small packages. The statement that makes me think of my girl, Emily, who maxed out at 5 feet tall. She was strong and compassionate, and she saw others for who they were as people, not their financial status, gender, race, political views, etc. She was giving of herself and forgiving. An LNA, a licensed nursing assistant. Emily got her certificate and license and joined the healthcare industry in 2019. It was a job where she cleaned patients, took their vital signs, sat with and provided companionship to patients who required observation, and even cared for the remains of those who had passed. Emily would be horrified by the inhumane way that the convicted treated her remains. A big sister, the only daughter, first granddaughter and great-granddaughter, niece and cousin, a best friend. These are the labels given to Emily in her life. A mother, an auntie, a grandmother, a best friend. The labels that she was denied the day she was murdered. She loved babies and dreamed of having children of her own one day. Mom, he keeps accusing me of cheating on him. I try to tell him that I'm not, but he won't listen. I've never cheated on him. She said he was telling her she wasn't pulling her weight because she wasn't working, even though he was a big part of the reason she was unemployed. She was no longer an LNA because he repeatedly messaged her when she was on the floor, insisting that she meet him outside of her break times to accuse her of cheating on him with coworkers. Dozens of bruises from her belly button to her knees. Fingernail gouges down her chest, hand grab bruises on the back of her arm. Dreading.
Okay, so just a trigger warning that they are talking about themes of domestic violence. If anything ever gets too much for you, just know we will always save you a seat. Thank you so much all for being here.
A phone call from her as it meant she was crying and he'd done something to devastate her again. Feeling a strong intuition that my life was in danger when we were out to eat the weekend before they left, that he wasn't safe to be alone with, unable to come up with the words to describe to her what I felt, to warn her, not realizing it was her life that was in danger, not mine. 5 foot tall, a devoted wife, athletic, a singer, unemployed and broke, bruised and tired, but excited to meet her sister-in-law, Nikki. The description of Emily on the day she left for Bolton Valley, Vermont. It didn't want to go, referring to the camper bus not wanting to climb the hill up the Bolton Valley access road. It was the last thing we ever heard from her. I still, to this day, read that text as if it said, I didn't want to go, instead referring to herself. Confused, anxious, afraid, in shock. How I felt the night the convicted returned to our house without Emily. Where is she? How could he leave her on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere? Why didn't he look for her or report her missing himself? Why didn't he reach out to David or myself to see that she had made it home? Why did he really have her driver's license? The questions that ran through my mind as David and I made the decision to call the Vermont State Police to report Emily missing. Has she been out in the cold alone, injured, in the middle of Vermont? Has she been abducted? Is she still alive? The questions that I asked myself as we drove to Vermont to meet with Kate Brayton the day after we reported her missing. Anguish, utter despair, raging anger, broken, uncontrollable screaming and crying, and collapsed onto the floor. How I felt when the detective told me they had found human remains on the camper that Emily left our home in. They said they couldn't yet confirm that it was my daughter, but I knew. Were all of her parts found? Can I please just hold her hand? You can cover the rest of her, I just want to hold her hand. Pleading with the medical examiner. Is it too late to ask for a lock of her hair? Questions no mother should ever have to ask. Were her glasses? Where are her glasses? Her phone, her wallet. Emily was never without these three possessions. She couldn't see without her glasses. She was extremely farsighted. She felt disconnected from others without her phone. Oh, what I wouldn't give for the chance to see the photos that she took in the last few days of her life, the last few months of her life. They weren't backed up on her closet. And although he made sure she had no job or money, her wallet contained her maxed out credit cards and should have contained her driver's license. Hollow, lost, unable to think, eat, sleep, or stop crying. This is the way I existed as our family and friends carried me through the following few weeks, where I was forced by the actions of the convicted to decide how to care for my daughter's remains. Which urn to carry her home in, how to wash the smell of death from the lock of hair I was given, when, where, and how to celebrate the life she lived. A 5K runner, a healthy eater, fibromyalgia survivor, retired early Head Start teacher, second-year grad student with the University of New Hampshire, aspiring speech pathologist, actively engaged with my classmates and clients, an advocate for children and families living in poverty and adversity. Labels that one could use to describe my life journey on the day Emily left for Bolton Valley, Vermont. The last time I hugged her goodbye, I was in the middle of reviewing materials I would use the following week to conduct an aphasia assessment on a patient being seen in our UNH clinic. I never made it to the aphasia assessment, nor have I been able to complete my degree program or even attempt to return to the workforce to earn an income. Instead, I have since endured crushing panic attacks, constant intrusive thoughts and flashback memories of Emily's last few days of life and how she was murdered, seeing him jump on her resting body over and over again, seeing him begin to dismember her body over and over again and again. Struggling to hold on to my will to live, unable to drive alone, frozen in the grocery store. Intense hyper-awareness of sound and motions around me, irritability and dissociation, so many last days spent unable to be present as my brain attempts to shield me from the anguish. Nightmares, night terrors, insomnia, complete loss of trust in the people outside of my inner circle, loss of faith in others that are inherently good, safe. Fighting for the family dog, and her motorcycle. Meeting Remy with a fierceness I didn't know I had in me. Moving out of our New Hampshire home because it was simply too painful to live there without her. Handguns, black trash bags, handsaws. 3 of the things I cannot see, touch, or be near without feeling instant response of panic and revulsion as my mind fights to shield me from the images they inflict. Seeing him jump on her and seeing him dismember her. Being re-traumatized when he lied about who Emily was and what happened on the bus that night. Knowing who my daughter was versus who he portrayed her to be. Using this distraction of our emotional response to the lies to deflect from his own guilt. Therapy 3 times a week, numerous medications I would rather not have to take, loving family and friends. The reasons that I'm still alive today. To stand here and give you a testimony on the impact this crime has had on me and my life. I know that this statement is not complete. It is a living, breathing testament to the love I feel for my daughter and the beautiful life that was stolen. She will forever be 22, just at the cusp of adulthood. In conclusion, I want the court to know that I agree with the state's position regarding sentencing. Thank you.
Remy. Happy. Oh, hey. Hi, puppy. Hi. What are you doing?
Me and Lauren are literally crying. We just got to my house and there's 2 kittens. This one's all black. Look at him. Oh,
This is mine.
I'm so happy.
This one is mom.
What is this one's name?
Seote, I call him Shazbot.
Oh, Bob.
Oh,
He's gonna be very confused.
oh.
What goes like this, the
All right. We're back on the record in State versus Joseph Ferlazzo.
Thank you to all of you who are bearing with me. I told you, Bill Gates is doing stuff. What a beautiful song. What a beautiful voice Emily had, right? Maureen said, proud to be a Grizzly, so proud of Gisela and her Mars and how they advocate for victims and their families. Thank you so much. Okay.
So Junior, 21 CR 8967. I think we're up to the part in sentencing where you'll read whatever letters you want to read into the
Thank you,
into
Judge.
evidence.
So we do, and I submitted, have several letters that would, from people who have known Mr. Ferlazzo and want.
Okay, snarky pants back on. Now we're going to hear letters about Joseph Ferlazzo's character. Anyone excited? I'm not. We have just less than an hour left of the sentencing. So we're going to hear these letters and then the judge will sentence him.
To tell the court their experiences with him as a person. So I'll start with Jason Lang. I first met Joseph and immediately felt comfortable. Little did I know we would hit it off and he'd become my best friend and brother. His mellow demeanor and personality made him easy to talk with. And I found that the more we shared, the more we had in common. Our passion for riding motorcycles sealed the deal. I was hooked, and this guy complemented my life and helped expand my knowledge in many areas. Over the years, our friendship...
Oh no, do we have to? Should I skip forward, you guys? Do we have to listen to this crap? I could always link it for you if you want to listen. Tell me in the chat. Do you want me to skip forward?
I think that's a typo, was more. He became the younger brother I never had. We were fortunate to share the road together riding motorcycles. The countless hours of tattoo sessions, paren, he gave me my first one, a day I will never forget, close paren. where we talk about anything and everything. There was no working at it. It just
You guys are all like, skip, skip, skip. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. I'm sure. If you want to see it, I will link the source for you in the description box. All sources, Court TV, Law and Crime, will be linked for you. They have multiple segments of the sentencing, but oh man, I don't know if I could endure this right now either. So many letters. Oh no, about Joseph Ferlazzo's character. I don't think so.
Right now, there's no record being made of what these are.
I understand.
Oh, then they had to show his beautiful, that according to the defense, tattoo work, you know? Okay, so we defluffing. We're skipping forward. We're teleporting.
But I think it's sufficient for today's purpose that the court see, it's not in the record, but that the court see some of his artwork.
All right, do you want to at least identify what we're looking at?
I can't, can you? What is this?
He wants to show off his
So,
art.
Mr. Ferlazzo is telling me that these are various tattoos on people that we're not identifying.
Okay.
I really like the judges. Okay. No, man, just stop it.
Mr. Ferlazzo, his artwork.
All right, do you want to at least identify? All right, thank you.
All right. Let's get to sentencing, shall we? Here we go.
As the parties have noted, there are certain statutory and common law concerns the court must address, at least consider, in imposing sentence. Under 13 BSA Section 7030A, the court must consider the nature and circumstances of the offense, the history and characteristics of the defendant, defendant's family circumstances and relationships, if those are relevant, impact on defendant's children, not really been addressed as an issue, the need for treatment, non-compliance with court orders in the past, risk to others and the community. And the common law factors are generally punishment or retribution, are terms that are used, specific and general deterrence, and rehabilitation, if that is a consideration. There's overlap in all of these concepts, but I think it's fair to say most dramatic in this case, which shapes much of the sentence I will impose, has to do with the nature and circumstances of the offense, with consideration to the history and characteristics of the defendant. In other words, rehabilitation is not going to be a primary piece of this sentence, although the court is hopeful that Mr. Ferlazzo continues to do to adjust well in his environment and does present a good example for others who are in there. I want to begin by saying the obvious. Emily Ferlazzo had a beautiful, beautiful voice. And I'm not just referring to her singing, which we heard here today, which was great. It's Leonard Cohen's song. It's a beautiful song. But it's also clear from listening to the extraordinary impact statements provided by the victims here today that it extended to all areas of her life. It was a voice that deserved to be heard. It was a voice that deserved to grow, to mature, and if necessary, to heal. And it deserved to do that for a long, happy life. That very sadly was cut short by her murder on October 16, 2021. And it was cut short at the hands of Joseph Ferlazzo. So that is a segue into looking at the nature and circumstances of this case. This is an horrendous crime. It is an act of cruel and extreme domestic violence that the jury clearly found not only failed entirely to make out self-defense, but lacked any provocation that may reduce the crime to second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter.
Yeah, you tell them, Judge.
And the court fully finds that it was a crime that was premeditated and deliberate. So it is an appropriate case for consideration as a first-degree murder conviction. The circumstances of the crime, and I think, and I'll get to Mr. Ferlazzo's statement to the court today, while there were certain things where a little bit more openness in that statement, there was also a recognition in the statement that perhaps the fight that led to the murder was this fight about whether Emily was going to turn him in for unprofessional conduct that she felt he was doing. And that he saw his livelihood or things like that. That's certainly something he shared with police in giving his statement. And it may have been more complicated. There may have been other things going on. But clearly that sense of I might leave you or this is something that I can't live with anymore in terms of what she considered unprofessional conduct seemed to be a precipitating or part of the precipitating events that led to her murder. The statement given by Mr. Ferlazzo to police, as the court has pointed out in its written findings relative to the motion for judgment of acquittal and for a new trial, and stated in part already today, was an extraordinarily complete statement in many respects of Mr. Ferlazzo's involvement in Emily's death. It was a statement that, in the court's consideration, was voluntary, done pursuant to excellent police procedure, and a statement he wanted to give at the time. And he did give. It is a statement in which he fully confessed to having whatever the buildup was. And there are many things still in that statement and testimony regarding hitting with a Yankee Candle and things like that, which there is no corroborating evidence, and frankly, without that, the court does not find it. The court there was no evidence of bruising. We saw what Mr. Ferlazzo's body looked like through pictures introduced at trial. There was no evidence of scratches. There was no evidence of marks. There was nothing. He's a liar, so whatever occurred seemed to be connected to what Dr. Powell said, a tumultuous relationship that they had. And it's certainly clear that they did. And the exact who did what to whom under what circumstances is really not something the court has a clear idea of. There wasn't clear testimony on it. There certainly was some on each side. But the fact that Mr. Ferlazzo did as he said, which is after sitting for whether it was 5, 10, 15 minutes percolating, feeling this heat, this wave, he picked up a gun with a silencer out of the closet, got over Miss Ferlazzo, straddled her. She said words to the effect, you got to be fucking kidding me. And he put the pillow over her head and shot her twice in the head. And that is what he said to police. And what's equally important is that is what the evidence showed in the aftermath, that this wasn't something that he was feeling badly and just wanted to take responsibility for something he didn't do. It was something that was clearly confirmed through the police investigation thereafter. The pillow was there with the shots, the blood, the fact that the head was against pillows was confirmed by Dr. Shapiro with the exit wounds that showed that this was not a case where she was lifting up and then fell back down. So the evidence he provided of the murder itself, the Taurus is found under his pillow. Not the Taurus, the Glock is found underneath his pillow. There is no Taurus found on the bed. The Taurus, I think, is in a kitchen drawer when police come in thereafter. So these are all facts which Mr. Ferlazzo provided to police, which are clearly consistent with the police investigation thereafter. He then discusses what he did in great detail with the brunch at Misty's, what he said and how he lied to his sister repeatedly, how he lied to the Langs, how the conversations he had with the Basses when he goes there on Monday night, all of which are intended, it would appear, to throw folks off from determining that he did it. The aftermath, when we're looking at the circumstances of this offense, the aftermath of the murder is something that sets this case significantly apart. While provocation was completely unjustified here, leading to the murder, and this is a sad comment, murders by people who explode in a short period of time occur. There are other cases with a longer period of time of planning and things like that. If it had ended there, the court would have to view it one way, but it didn't end there.
It got so much worse.
Every step taken in the next 3 days are steps that have rarely been seen before. And this is intercepts somewhat with Mr. Ferlazzo's testimony, because what happened and what he admitted to police, obviously, is that he had not only put up a plastic bag over Emily's head so she wouldn't bleed too much on the bed, but that he then, he thought it was early afternoon that day, whether it was or not, that there does appear to be a time in there, since he seems to go up towards St. Albans at about 12:03, and he's starting the tattoo of his sister maybe at 3 o'clock that day, so there is a window then. There's no other window that I know of in the day, given the tattoo, then dinner, and then the campfire on that night. But he dismembers her body as described by him, and then as found, says he puts them in black bags that are in the shower, and indeed that's where they are. Again, details, police were clearly didn't know that detail when he gives that statement. And he clearly tells them where it is, and he accepts that he has done that.
If you didn't see his interrogation that they played during the trial, oh my word, that's your homework then. You got to go check out the craziness of that guy. How he was talking about everything, especially after they offered him a blankie, oh my word, and donuts. Oh, then he was ready to confess. So I like how the judge is continuously reminding him that you gave those details. You made those admissions. You made those confessions. Like, this is on you. And that matches the crime. And that he's highlighting, wow, if you shot her, that's already bad. But what happened next is so much worse.
What is interesting, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, I don't exactly know what to make of it. But even in this statement, and certainly in the trial and in the entire aftermath of what's going on, I think Ms. George used the word detachment. There is a detachment that appears to allow him to have a nice meal with his sister within 8 or 9 hours of having killed Emily. a detachment which allows him to have the steadiness of hand to do a tattoo over the course of 3 hours, and then to engage in more time with his sister, and then friendly conversation by the campfire that night. A detachment that allows him to go on Monday to the Bass house, break bread with them, and come up with a story both to them and I think it's Trooper Cody, about where his van is, where things are. But just, and then a detachment in the way he expresses things.
I mean, given that he's a convicted killer, the way that he compartmentalizes is scary because it's similar to serial killers. Like, to be able to do all the things he did, go for breakfast with his sister, go have a bonfire with his friends, and in between, post-mortem, stabbing Emily 18 times and going out again and then dismembering her. I mean, it's really, yeah, this detachment, wow. The way he compartmentalizes his time and his life, and sure, the way he can lie, it makes him incredibly dangerous, in my opinion.
I don't know what that's about. I'm not going to try here to figure that out, but it is an extraordinary event. So the factor of but what also was shown, and maybe by the dismemberment, maybe more by the 18 stab wounds post-mortem, is that there's an incredible rage that has never been discussed. What's going on in Mr. Ferlazzo? And when the state points to the fact that now there's amnesia about this, whether that's an accurate statement or not, we don't have a clue how that rage is being processed, how he is dealing with whatever it is he did. Because instead, we got a statement now that subsequently that this is in self-defense, and I don't really remember anything I told police. I don't remember dismembering the body that I talked so vividly about. I never introduced the stab wounds in my first statement, but I don't remember them or going to the Basses. That could be seen as quite convenient because it doesn't allow for real cross-examination of the event. But what the court can say with utter certainty, and this gets into the characteristics of the defendant to some degree that we'll get to, is that the testimony at trial was untruthful. And whatever the basis for that is, whether it's out and out lies, as the state understandably suspects, or it's some psychological piece that Mr. Ferlazzo can't accept, or something in between. The fact is that his testimony regarding how this offense occurred and the aftermath is not believable. And no, I don't know if I've ever seen a case, and I've been doing this for a long time in different capacities, where we're used to inconsistencies between witnesses. We're used to even very, very different accounts of events by different witnesses. And we have to say, gee, are they telling the truth? Are they lying? Did they see it differently? We do all those things we try to do to figure out what the truth is. I don't know if I've ever seen a case where the extraordinary inconsistency in statement is by the same person, and that the much more detailed statement is the first one, and the second one is the one that is vague and subject to amnesia. And that's why I asked the questions I did of Dr. Powell to see whether he'd ever seen anything where somebody had such clear recollection and then had very little, and what he did have was just vastly different. For example, a gun being under her pillow that wasn't ever there before, and certainly wasn't there when police came to do the search. And he said that suggested a lack of credibility even in that regard. So that is important on a number of fronts. The amnesia is important on a number of fronts. The inability to face what he did in one way or another, not only in the killing, but after the killing, is important because it does go to a sense, does that present a risk if released? Now, the sentence the court is going to impose, whether it is going to be long enough that I don't think that's the major concern here, but I think it's well taken that unless this is dealt with, if he were to be in another relationship and didn't deal with that, there are risks.
That's huge risk.
All right. Going further into the history, so in terms of the nature and seriousness of the offense, let me just say, together with the aftermath, and considering just how the aftermath exacerbated the pain and suffering of the family in this case, it's just an extraordinarily powerful piece. All of the impact statements were very important for the court here. Of course, Ms. Bass has summed it up in a way that provided what the court really hoped, which is to make Emily be a person of respect, of concern, of love, of care, and they did that very well. But it also showed just how painful living with the idea of imagining what was happening to your daughter when it's happening, imagining speaking with Mr. Ferlazzo, talking to them with a straight face about Emily leaving when he knew that wasn't the case. The pain that generates not only the day after when they learn of the murder, but every day since, it's extraordinarily powerful. Let's talk a little bit more about Mr. Ferlazzo. I have talked about, and there are characteristics which are of great concern that I've already talked about, and that is how he can behave in the way he behaved in the 3 days after the murder. What is that about that hasn't...
Sorry to pause there, but yes, what is that about? That is the most chilling thing about him, right? Jill and Brian, you sharing lighthouses? I agree. This judge is a lighthouse.
Been challenged. Certainly Dr. Powell wasn't asked to comment on that, and I don't blame the defense for not. I think that makes sense, but clearly it showed a person who can divorce himself from emotion to such a degree as to continue to hide this horrendous act that he had done. But there are qualities that Mr. Ferlazzo does have, and life is complicated, and Mr. Ferlazzo, I'm sure, is complicated. He doesn't have a criminal record. He's an extraordinary artist. People love his tattoo work. Indeed, sadly, I think that's how Emily and he may have first connected, and certainly with some of the other women who provided reference letters for him. I'm not going to get involved with what the relationship was between Mr. Ferlazzo and those women. I will take them at their word that he provided some comfort for them. How he did it, whether it was on terms of it works for me as long as I'm your protector and you're listening to me, but not, that's beyond the scope, I think, of what the evidence showed completely in the case. Although I certainly understand the state's argument in that regard. So there are qualities that he has, and even the inmate, Mr. Morrow, who talked, he may not be the greatest guy in the world, but the fact that Mr. Ferlazzo can talk to him in a thoughtful way is, I can see how he can do that. He can talk thoughtfully. He can talk in ways that you want to believe also. whether they're true or not. And that's an issue that the court is battling with a bit. In terms of characteristics, I don't. So let's talk about the alcohol use. I think there is a certain convenience to bringing up alcohol use now because it is a mitigating factor, which obviously folks know about or can be a mitigating factor. I am thinking of, though, a case that's recent, State v. Schwartz, which was a first degree reduced to a second degree. And the guy was clearly very, very drunk and shot his wife. The significant history of alcohol abuse and domestic abuse in that case that may not be present here, but the aftermath facts are not present there that are present here. But we heard at most that Mr. Ferlazzo in his trial testimony had a few Red Bulls and vodkas. In the statement to police, it was some vodka and some wine, and maybe smoked some pot. In the statement to police, it wasn't that big a deal. What is very clear, though, is, for example, there's almost nothing he drank between the hours of 3 o'clock on Saturday and midnight, when he did the tattoo, goes out for dinner without much, and then is sitting at a campfire and not drinking at all. So the description of him as a quote-unquote chronic alcoholic, I don't think he's ever described himself as that, but the court does not find that he is that. I also have in mind Ms. Bass's testimony at trial, where she didn't see drinking as being a significant event in the months that he lived there. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't be helped by addressing, and apparently he has addressed, his alcohol use. But the court is, and whether it played any part in his response here, he did today for the first time acknowledge at least overreaction in his killing of Ms. Ferlazzo. He still insists it was all quick and of that nature, which I think is inconsistent with the testimony. But there's at least some acknowledgement he should not have done what he did, and a softening of the statement he gave in the pre-sentence investigation report, which again did do what I think Ms. George said. It sought to say, I had no choice, I had to do this or die, but I should have died. And again, it's a statement that portrays him more the victim and Ms. Ferlazzo more the perpetrator. And let me be very clear, there's only one victim in this case, and that's Ms. Ferlazzo.
Yes. Well done, Judge. There's only one. Well, obviously her family are victims in the case, but when he says that, that's directly at Joseph Ferlazzo. You're not a victim. The victim is Emily. Buzzy B said he's not an artist, just like Brian Laundrie tracing stuff, right? I wouldn't describe him as an extraordinary artist. This guy was tracing stuff.
The history and characteristics of Mr. Ferlazzo are mixed. There are certainly some strong pieces, and there are certainly some extraordinarily concerning pieces, given what we've learned through what he did after the event, which is, again, so troubling, without any recognition of why it would be so troubling. We still, to that day, haven't heard that. All right. In terms of other things, and again, I don't like to stress individual pieces. We have talked a lot about dismemberment and the stabbing and going to the Basses. But the text messages that were provided and seemingly addressed to Emily, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, whatever number they were, ending with the one on October 18th with I don't deserve this shit. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not going to overplay that, but it's an extraordinary piece of that goes to this thought that I'm still the victim here. And you're going to have a long time to think about this. Think about what really happened here. I've heard there's a trauma history, and maybe there is. I haven't seen any. And one of the things you might want to do in unbuckling a trauma history is see how did that trauma result in my making a decision to end Emily's life. And instead I'm hearing still that it was more or less a case of self-defense, which is, so someday that might be something he can do. I assuming had a hard time. I don't have enough evidence here about trauma history to consider that in any kind of deep way from a mitigation point of view. So the mitigators are the lack of criminal record, the feelings of some folks of how important he was in their life. I think that those are real. But the aggravators are stronger, and here it is. She's lying in bed. She's 5 foot or 5'3". Mom thinks 5 foot. Some records said 5'3". She weighs 128 pounds at most. Some thought 120. Mr. Ferlazzo was in extraordinary shape. He's this strong, great-looking guy. And
I object.
6 feet.
I object to a strong, great-looking guy. Take it back, Judge.
Tall. There's just no excuse. And the aggravators primarily include everything he did afterwards. Certainly the state is right. The court can consider United States v. Donegan is a 93 case in which if the court believes that a person is lying or significantly untruthful, that can be a basis to believe, and that's a U.S. Supreme Court case, that in fact there's continued risk to community. And in this case, again, I don't want to categorize it. I know Ms. Jantz has not wanted me to categorize it, but it's clear to the court that the testimony Mr. Ferlazzo gave here was not credible. It was not truthful. Every bit of independent testimony confirmed that. You know, I made reference to the falling back, but the cradling of Ms. Ferlazzo's body. And he did say maybe this was a dreamlike sequence. I don't know, but it was supposedly occurred Saturday night when he's at the campfire. And it also probably, if his testimony, at least his statements to Detective Orris are correct, was after he had already cut up her body. And we're not quite sure when that happened, but I thought that.
Dreamlike, nightmare-like, horror movie stuff. Terrible. Sure, but I understand what the judge is saying. I'm just adding my own commentary. They're like, what?
Was his best indication that it was early afternoon. So these are all very complicating and aggravating circumstances in this case because so long as he continues to think of himself as a victim, he's not going to progress as much, very much in this regard.
Nope.
I will note that if he's not involved in an intimate relationship, there isn't a basis to think that he presents significant public safety concerns. So in balance, I have considered specific general deterrence. I don't think specific deterrence will be there, but mostly this is a punishment, nature and circumstances of the case sort of sentence with some reflection for his history and characteristics. I did note there are other sentences I have reviewed. Swartz was one of them. Ray is another one. Those are both second-degree murder convictions, although Swartz clearly was a first-degree type case. And without the extraordinary cover-up and the untruthfulness during trial, the court might have been inclined at a somewhat lower sentence. The court is not going to go as high as the state has asked, but it does believe a to-serve sentence is required. It does not believe the circumstances of this case are extraordinarily aggravated, and it also thinks some amount of time beyond the statutory minimum is appropriate, given the aggravating nature of the circumstances. So I will announce the sentence of the court at this time.
Here we go.
The sentence of the court on the conviction for first-degree murder will be 42 and a half years to life to serve. I wish you luck. I wish this family luck and blessings in the secular sense of the term. I really, and Mr. Ferlazzo.
42 and a half to life. He's 44 years old. He might be 45. I don't know exactly when his birthday is. He was 44 years old at the time of the trial. So he would be eligible, he would not be eligible for parole until after serving the minimum of 42.5. So what's the earliest that he could face a parole board? Age 86 and a half. If I did the math right. Age 86 and a half. Yeah, okay.
Also, there are things you can do good while you're incarcerated. Go about and keep doing them and live your life and try and see where you can grow as well. Thank you, everybody.
Judge, may I ask a question so my record for appeal is...
No, ma'am. Okay, but record for appeal. Oh, wow. What do you guys think of that? 42 and a half. I mean, I wish it was LWOP. But 42 and a half. It'd be 86 and a half when he can face a parole board. Damn. Yeah, I think it is good enough. What do you think?
Clear, because the court has used interchangeably untruthful and not credible, and I do not see them as the same thing. Not credible means that you do not believe that a person doesn't believe the statements. Untruthful means a deliberate...
I don't think it does. I think it's just not true.
Well, not true and untruthful are the same, that the person is aware of the truth and is attempting deliberately to deceive.
I never used that term.
You used the term untruthful.
I did. I think you folks are going to have to look it up after.
Judge is laughing.
I did, and I have...
And it says that I thought the testimony was not true, right?
Untruthful twice, but you've also alternated with not credible. And I just want to make sure for appeal purposes, which one...
I'm just saying they're the same thing.
Okay.
I'm saying they're the same thing. I am not getting into his psychological state as whether his intent was specifically to lie, which I think the evidence showed it might have been. I think there's good basis to do that, or whether he just can't live with what he did and has made up something which he may believe is true now. It just isn't true. And I think that is a aggravating circumstance, whether he's lying intentionally or just unable to face what he did.
I understand the court's explanation. For appellate purposes, though, if the court means that he is deliberately being deceptive, then I object to the court relying on that for sentencing for purposes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Look what I did for you now. Yeah, bye.
We are back on the record in
Okay, let's not watch it all again. We already watched it. But I like the way the judge at the end is like, okay, take care, everyone. I mean, I know the defense attorney is just doing her job, but yeah. Okay, then, bye-bye now. And off he goes. We didn't get to see the rest of that. Unfortunately, that's where the court feed seemed to end, so we didn't get to see him get handcuffed and dragged out of there. But ta-ta now, until age 86.5. And then maybe he'll be facing a parole board if he gets to that age. Denied, maybe. Huh? Normally people don't get out on their first parole hearing either. So, yeah, good luck to him. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for watching that with me. It's always nice to watch, obviously, a trial together. I can't wait to watch another trial together with you. I'm always looking at what's happening. I know I'm not covering the very popular ones happening now, but I look forward to watching the next trial with you. And it's always nice to watch then the sentencing, which sometimes, as we know, can take months. This guy was convicted in December of 2024. And now, here we are in April, end of April of 2025, and finally he was sentenced. Oh my goodness. Sarcasm says 42.5 years. I think, even though we all want LWOP, I think it's enough. You know, I would have preferred LWOP, but I think it's enough. 42.5. And he's not eligible for parole until that minimum time is served. So I'm so glad that justice for Emily was served. I feel terrible for her family. The victim impact statements were very powerful. If you missed them and you're only joining now, I hope you'll check them out. I'll make sure to do some timestamps for you. And thank you so much for spending so much time with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, mods. Thanks, everyone, for the support. If you became a member today, go check out the members-only live stream we did yesterday. It's on the members-only playlist, which you can find in the playlist section. And then you can watch that. Or if you want to join Patreon for $1, you can get access to all the YouTube members-only replays and lots of behind-the-scenes content. So thank you so much, everyone. Ta-ta to Joseph Ferlazzo, Giuseppe, as he wants to be called. My word. And I will see you again in the next one. Stay safe.